right now because I don't think there's any way to set that up. So all I can tell you is we are officially on the air, everyone. Hello, everyone out there. This is flying by the seat of our pants as per usual. The new Clobberin time, issue number 2. Yes, indeedishness. We are here. It's live, but of course it'll be Memorex eventually. But right now it is live, and it is Saturday night, and I've got I got a lot of things I'm planning. Got all kind of big plans for this little teensy weensy little show that we're doing. Let me. I gotta. Oh, getting an echo. I'm hearing myself because I'm making sure the sound check worked. There, good, good, good. My sound check worked, and it was right in my ear hole there. Okay. So anyway, Clobber Time issue number 2, legacy numbering, because that's a silly thing with the comics industry right now. 702 though. That's right. For some strange reason, the Cosmos was not looking, and I got away with doing 701 of these suckers, but they didn't care, and there's no reason they should have. And we're fine with that. By the way, I don't mind being under the radar. I was, for a good number of years in the early days of the show, I was not under the radar all that much because back then not everyone and their mother had a podcast, and it was in Blog Talk Radio. Man, I had some wild chat rooms and just I mean, it was smoking fun. We had all kind of fun back then. Eventually, I started being able to keep less of a schedule, and people kept going all over the place, and I don't know, but it was still fun. Still kept doing it for the fun of it, and I just thought recently that I could just end it and walk away, and I couldn't. I just have too much fun doing it. So if I get one person listening, a half a person listening, nobody, dead people like the D's get their votes, it doesn't matter. Hey, it's all in good fun, and that's what I'm here for. Fun. Oh, look at that, Iris, my wonderful friend Iris of Chaos. Incidentally, anybody who is listening or does listen later, we won't judge you either way. Go seek out the YouTube channel Iris of Chaos, a new channel just like mine. And of course, I have been honored to have her on my show back when I was on BTR, and have been a guest on her wonderful new show that she has started on YouTube. That she does. She does about an hour or so on Wednesday nights when she can, and I think she'll be doing that for a while. And of course, she does a Saturday show around usually 2 p.m. She did a wonderful one today, talking like we all do, geek stuff and things like that. So I'm excited to see hers dropping by there. And I enjoyed your show very much today, my friend. It was excellent. And it was right. On Saturday now I'm busy. I got the retro blasting live stream to enjoy. My great, wonderful friends, Michael and Melinda at Retro Blasting. So anyone who does listen, anyone who is hanging out, listening, and or hearing on the feeds later, that's an old BTR term. There are no more feeds anymore. Why did I say that? But downloads, whatever it is, go to retroblasting.com if you never have. If you like, cool retro toys and cartoon videos and things like that, and go to Iris of Chaos. Just go to her page and sub, please. And sorry. You ever get text messages when you're doing a show? Anybody? Oh my God, he doesn't know I'm on. Good. Sorry about that noise if you heard it. No. But anyway, tonight I am very honored to have a good old friend of mine who I'm going to ask some questions before we get started because I'm curious about some things here. And we're going to, you may have guessed from the title Clobberin Time, if you know anything about comic books, that's kind of a title that has been derived from the love of comic books. In particular, that of the Fantastic Four, my favorite all-time character, the ever-loving brown-eyed thing. As you can see, we are both representing him on either side there of Superman flying out of the sun. So we're going to talk comics tonight. I'm thinking about starting to do some more specialized streams, like on maybe the Saturday night show, doing comics and stuff. I'm going to do some Trek talk shows, things like that. Do a lot of Star Trek talk. Like I used to. Again, that used to be an old show. I used to do a lot. I used to do like once a month Trek Talk a good while back. Some more topic shows and mixed in with the Open Geeks silliness that we do. And my good friend, should we just, you're going to keep your secret identity as Mark? And go with Mark C?
There are those out there that know better, but that's fine.
That's cool. Well, it was confusing for one friend of mine because when they saw Mark C, I think it was Claude, because he didn't know you were. He knows you by your, your other name, and he saw that. He thought we have a good friend of mine named Mark Castillon, who is not here at the moment, but he's popped in from time to time. A very dear friend of mine. We call him Mark Cast Iron, Ace Cast Iron, and so automatically, any friend of mine that sees that, they think it's him because they don't, So I had to tell him that. But anyway, we'll get through a few show notes and stuff in a minute. But I would ask you. Well, I'll do this first. We'll get it out of the way because it's kind of a bummer, and you don't want to stay too much time on a bummer. But we were talking a little bit before the show. For those who do not know, or again, I guess we're gonna have a lot of people trickling in later because they said they would. But we do have one wonderful audience member right there, and she is wonderful. But comic books of recent, the comic book art form has lost some giants of late. We were talking about that at the outset, or right before the show, Mark and I. A few months back, of course, the great Mort Drucker, if you're familiar with Mad Magazine. Last week, or was it week before last, or whatever, the great Denny O'Neil.
It was last week.
Yeah,
and
last week.
Then earlier this week, we lost Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. You're right, Joel Schumacher.
Tangentially, he is an artist in the comic book field. And then all of a sudden we lose Joe Sinnott.
Joe Sinnott one hit me right. I mean, again, 93 years old, and that's fantastic, long life, and that is a wonderful thing. So we're very happy for that for him. Nevertheless, when he's someone who's done so much that's so important to you, you and I are both big fans of a little comic book called The Fantastic Four. For those who don't know, that's Marvel's flagship. Everything, and without that, there's no Marvel comics. And they've been kind of treated poorly by Marvel Comics over the years. But the Fantastic Four, anyone who has ever enjoyed an MCU film, if you like the MCU, the Avengers films and such, without the Fantastic Four, they don't happen. Without what the Fantastic Four did, and when people talk about the Fantastic Four, the default is usually to talk about their co-creators, the great legendary Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And people think of that first. And, later, people who like to talk about the details and the intricacies will talk about certain artists who worked on the book later. But for those who do not know, because it's almost a lost art, inkers, many comic books took a long time to produce. So pencilers, people who drew comics, didn't have a lot of time to draw their comics with a pencil and then ink them and finish the art. They delineate it, if you will. I'm no artist. I only know these things, even though I'm no artist, and you are, of course. But inkers became a big thing. Like they would finish their pencils, send them off to an inker, and an inker can be very, very influential on the pencils and put their own style on it. It's an art form of itself. And Iris is like some of the MCU films. So hey, you have Jack Kirby to thank for that, and of course the Fantastic Four, amongst others. But when people say the Fantastic Four, you always hear it's Kirby, Lee Kirby, however you want to say it. Nobody, and I mean nobody, worked on more Fantastic Four comic books. Nobody more than inker and artist. He's a great artist as well. Joe Sinnott. And he put such a style on it. Kirby, of course, set the tone, and somewhere a little before halfway through Kirby's run on the series, along comes Joe Sinnott, and he did it for Kirby like 60-something issues, whatever it was, and stayed on the book. I mean, he got off once in a while, but he stayed on it almost for like 3 to 4 decades almost. And he put his mark on every other penciler, and it's almost as if he transferred Kirby's spirit into all those other pencilers and gave them all a Kirby type of a feel. And since Kirby is, when it comes to the Fantastic Four, that's huge. I love it. John Buscema, Rich Buckler, who did kind of aped Kirby anyway, George Perez, Keith Pollard, John Byrne, and those are like some of the bigger names of that era. Who even
outside of that, don't forget after Kirby left, John Romita actually did I think 4 issues of that book.
He did. You're right.
And as did Bill Sienkiewicz, who basically was pencil chores on that book until Byrne was ready to take it over.
Sienkiewicz did it for a while, and there's the thing that you could not find a more ill-suited artist for the Fantastic Four than Bill Sienkiewicz, and Sinnott made it work. It still wasn't, perfect, because this was a guy that was mostly used to aping Adams until he got his style a little bit away from that. But yeah, doing FF, I remember when he did it, I'm like, what in the hell is Sienkiewicz doing this book? It was a weird time. Doug Minch wrote it. It was, I bought it anyway. But anyway, Joe sent it, and we'll move on from there. I just wanted to give him like big clobbering time. R.I.P. because I loved him. I've gotten to meet almost all of my favorites in the comic book pantheon. There's a few that I never got to meet and now never will in a couple of cases, and this is one of them I never got to meet. My good buddy J.A., who's part of my Baxter Building Basement page with me, is a huge Fantastic Four fan. He was friends with Joe Sennett, the lucky bastard, and he lived up there near him. And so now I will never get to meet Joe Sennett, unfortunately, but I love his work. And man, he's my favorite Kirby anchor, and there's some good ones, a lot of good ones. But for me, his ink, especially on FF, but just in general, he's my favorite inker in general. And on Kirby, he's my favorite. But there are some other good ones, but it's him. So, rest in peace, Mr. Sennett. You had a nice long life, and thank you for all that great work.
Absolutely. Rest in peace.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you before we get started, well, we're started. We're started as we can get. Our ages are slightly different. I guess of course, I'm old. You know that. You told, remember when I was on Doomcock's show a while back, and then you went in later and told him something that you may have told me before, but I may have forgot the whole story on it. I owned a comic shop in the late 1980s in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, our lovely hometown. And you visited it as a youngster. Is that not correct?
On multiple occasions, actually. But yes, there was one occasion in particular that was really caught my attention. It was in, I believe, '89. It was right as the Batman movie was coming out. And it may have been a little bit earlier than that. I think it was earlier than that. It was I remember the Batman the Cult and Batman the Killing Joke.
Yes.
Almost hit the stands simultaneously. And as much as The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One had kind of grown Batman up, this one took him into full-blown adulthood. And I remember it was my birthday, and I went in there, and those were two books that you had on the counter, not out in front for everybody to grab. And you can't not look at that cover to the Batman the Killing Joke and see that Brian Boland Joker and not want to buy that book. You can't. And so my father was actually in there with me, and sure enough, it was like, Dad, can I have these? And I, whoa, time out. And it's like, Dad, you may want to look through these books and make sure you're okay with son looking at these, because these aren't your fun everyday, floppy comic books here, fun adventure books. These deal with some pretty adult themes and get kind of bloody. So you might want to check them out. And I poured over those books. In fact, to be honest with you, as much as Batman the Cult Batman the Killing Joke has become such a seminal book in the Batman mythos, I like the Cult the better. I thought that this is a story about Deacon Blackfire, who kidnaps Batman and breaks him emotionally and mentally. And it's the first time I had ever seen anybody do that to Batman. What the Joker was trying to do to Gordon, Blackfire succeeded with Batman. He broke him. And that's what made that story stick out. Not only that, but the whole thing was written by Jim Starlin, who at the time was writing some of the best Batman stories ever written. And then on top of that, just masterfully drawn by Bernie Wrightson. It was a beautiful book. Beautiful book.
That Batman the Killing Joke came out the very first week I opened up this shop. The Cult was a little bit later. But Killing Joke came out that very first week, and everyone thought I was crazy to order just 100 at the time. I should have ordered more, but I was on a budget. I was just getting started out, and my customers base was going to be everyone who bought comics from me at the shop I worked at years before. And I had a pretty decent one, but I had to build one up or whatever. So I couldn't order. I wanted to order about 200, but I went with 100 because my good friend Carl Tupper at the time in BSI Comics, rest his wonderful soul, said he'd back me up on it if I needed some more. Turned out it became pretty tough to get, but I held on to comics, and I wouldn't. And there were people coming in there trying to buy multiple copies and getting mad at me when I wouldn't do it. I said, look, nobody's hoarding these. We're not going to do that at this shop. You want to, these are for being read and enjoyed, not hoarded, and not brought and jacked up ridiculous prices on somebody else's wall. So I'm limiting people who are just going to go, sell them at comic shops. And it wasn't like a week or two later, there was SwampCon, a convention SwampCon that I remember getting in a real big argument with Richard Peeney of ElfQuest fame.
I know Richard.
Over that comic. He did not like it. We were a lot of people didn't like it. I was an Alan Moore freak back then, big Alan Moore fanboy. Anyway, yes, there's some definitely valid criticisms about that book to be had, but man, it was huge at that point, and I loved it. And I loved the cult. Go ahead. Okay.
I think you need to look at those books as well as The Dark Knight Returns and even Watchmen in the context that they were originally put out. These were one-offs. These were away from continuity, and these were almost like what-if books. What became Elseworlds, exploring different avenues in an adult context, but it was taken outside of the monthly continuity. So if you're going to do these kind of stories, I don't know, but it's like, right now DC has the Black Label. If you want to tell stories with adult themes and violence and maybe sex or nudity in them, that's a place to do it. That's fine.
Oh yeah.
What Richard was upset about, and if you ever talk to John Byrne, he was just as angry about it. And over the years, I think they've both been proven to be correct, is that what was in those books has bled into the monthly continuity. And to the point where I lost my son as a comic book reader because I took him into a comic shop during the New 52 era. Right when he was 5 or 6 and never been in a comic shop before. And, and a kid wants to read what dad reads, And so he's seen Batman. He's seen Brave and the Bold. He grew up on Brave and the Bold. He used to fall asleep to Brave and the Bold, the cartoon.
Love it.
And so we go into the comic shop, and he knows his dad loves Captain America too. So he goes in, Dad, can I have this Captain America book? And we're in the middle of the Ed Brubaker run, or the second run.
Boy.
And it's a great run. It's well written, but I can't let a 5-year-old read that.
Let a kid read that. No.
And then he's like, well, what about this Batman book? Dad, I love Batman. And this is the Snyder Capullo run.
Oh, you can't do that either. Yeah.
No, it was at that point I realized that comic books had a real problem in that the kind of the anger that someone like a Richard Penney or John Byrne had over those books back in the 80s had proven to be true.
Well, Penney was just arguing he didn't think it was any good. He did not get in any. But I'm with you because I'm totally with you on that. How old were you, by the way, at that point? If you don't mind giving your age.
I'm 47 now, so we're talking.
Oh, you're not that far behind me.
No, I would have been about 13, 14, 15 at the time.
Do you remember Otto, who used to work at Double Play?
Absolutely. I miss Otto.
I miss Otto. Well, he's a good old buddy, but one day, when he first started there, and this is not the first time this has happened to me. When he first started there, about, I don't know what it was, 3-4 years ago now, maybe a good few years ago, I walked in there and I remember seeing him there like a minute or so, like the last time I'd been in. And I go, Ben, he says, hey, are you Mike Alonso? I said, yeah, man. He said, well, this is all your fault, man. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, me being he's a Batman fanatic, and he collects everything, as you well know. And he said he just started working at the comic. He said, me working at this comic shop and me being such a Batman, your fault. I said, huh? He said, my mother brought me to your comic book shop in 1988, and I wanted to buy Batman the Killing Joke, and you made me go outside and you brought the comic to my mother and made her approve it. And he's younger than you. And she was like, whatever, I don't care. But still, and that was it. I kept buying, that got me hooked on Batman. And I came back later and you sold me a bunch of Batman comics. And I was like, man. And a few years before that, it happened with someone else. Another guy who was in there telling me about how he started buying comics as a real young kid. His father brought him to the shop. And he said, this real cool guy at the shop sold me all these comics. I'm not really a real cool guy, everyone. I'm just saying what the guy said. He said, He said, man, and he sold us all this stuff right before the Batman movie came out. I had the shirts and comics, and this guy was like really well dressed. Now we were sitting there talking about Batman, and when he told me this at first, I didn't register. Then I started thinking, oh my God, that's me you're talking about. That's scary, dude. And that's happened other times as well. And I'm like, dude, that is. I'd made friends with people who were like 5 and 6 years old when I worked at Southland Comics the many years before that. They would tell me stories about me selling them comics that I don't remember them. I'm like, wow, why do you remember that? You were like 7 or 6. But you know how it goes. Comics are formative.
Well, I'll go even one more than that. Was your shop moved, correct?
Yes, it did. Around the corner for a little while, down a little farther away. Yep.
When you moved that shop, you were still there in '89, and that's when I remember coming back in. And that was the summer that Batman was coming out in the theater, and Batman it was the year, it was either that or it was right before the year before that. It may have been '88, because I bought you had a rack of shirts.
Oh,
and one of the shirts that I bought was this. It was Batman in silhouette with just the Bat logo with lightning bolt coming behind him. It was a cover. It was a cover to Detective Comic Books, and I can't remember the issue, 6 something or another, that Norm Brayfogle had drawn. Yep. And they had taken it and made an image of it on t-shirt. I've looked for that t-shirt again because it's long gone now. But anyway, I bought that from your shop when you moved around the corner.
Nice.
And I remember getting it then.
I had I had a little contest going. I remember I had a big, really nice hardcover of the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns special edition that I raffled off right before the movie came out. I still have a picture somewhere of me presenting it to the God. I feel so bad I can't remember his name now. He was a cool dude that used to come in there. That I don't remember but yeah, that was some time back then, man. We were all pumped up about that movie. Whatever you think of the Keaton film now, I mean, at that time we went from extremely worried about it being bad to actually liking it, and but that's now he might play him again.
Yeah, I was gonna say now we're looking at Keaton coming back.
Could happen. It could happen, and depending on what they do with it, who knows? Maybe it'll be all right.
It's funny because to get the link for this, I'm going on Twitter and I look and the first thing they give you is the trending. And one of the things that also is trending right now is Batfleck. There is a lot of love for Ben Affleck's Batman right now. And I love Henry Cavill as Superman. I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and I love Ben Affleck as Batman. I don't love the movies, but I think they were damn well cast.
I'm like I said, I don't disagree. You know how much I hate Man of Steel and I hate BVS, and actually, I'm actually don't disagree. RR, great to see you there, my friend. Thank you for being here. But actually, I don't disagree. I love Cavill, and if you ever got a chance to play Superman proper with a great costume and that stuff, I'm all for it. Hope it works. I love Gal Gadot, and I actually never was a big Affleck guy, but thought he did a pretty good job as George Reeves, as made up as a lot of that stupid Hollywoodland movie is. But yeah, in a as dumb as Justice League is, he's his Batman in that movie, who's more sane and less murderous and nuts as a BVS, is pretty good. So getting a chance, another bite at it as a proper Batman, I'd have no problem with. I think Batman and Superman should be closer to the same age, but they could work that out, I wouldn't be against that either.
Yeah, I don't have. I would. Let me put it this way: I would take a Batman, a Ben Affleck Batman movie before we get before they throw a Robert Pattinson Batman movie upon me.
Oh boy,
which
yeah,
which I don't know. I've seen the costume. I've seen pictures of it with the stuntman. I'm not impressed.
Oh boy.
But if they tell me a good story, maybe I can look past it. We'll see. The one thing about the Justice League I'll say is when we get to by the time you get to the end of it, you look at Cavill Superman and you're like, all right, well now he's finally Superman. He's acting like Superman. Now can we get can we get a Superman movie now? It's like nope, we're done with that. And like, no.
It's amazing. He finally, even though he's got the silly CGI, his mustache CGI'd off, which was dopey. He's acting like Superman at the end of that movie. Say what you want about the movie. It deserves every criticism it gets. I'm not defending the Whedon Justice League cut. I don't think the Snyder one's going to be any better, but let them do whatever they want. I don't care. I'm just fine that they got it. But He does. I'm actually, when I'm watching that thing, I'm actually not really that angry at the end, because I'm actually, like a lot of people were, because yes, it has no story and has no villain, but you got to see what Cavill could possibly be if he got a chance to play Superman proper. Maybe we'll find out, So good casting, and let's see. But with Jar Jar Abrams in charge, you just gotta, you can't really, you don't have a whole lot of hope. That's all I'm saying, because it's Jar Jar Abrams. So there you go on that. We will see. By the way, everyone out there, just this news update: Soylent Green is people. Just in case you didn't know. And bang the rocks together, guys. It's another one you used to say all the time. Oh, and of course, this just in: the Golden Age Alan Scott is now gay. Not just the Earth One thing or whatever, but the Screw 52 one. Now the Golden Age one is retroactively gay. Thank you, DC, you jerks.
Of course.
That's so...
Here, and I look at John Byrne has gone back and said that I actually intended North Star to be gay the whole time.
Yes,
I was just, he probably is. And it was like I was just very subtle about it. I honestly, I don't have a problem with the idea of whether a character is a woman or whether he's black or Asian or gay, but create new characters. There's no reason to go back and change a character that's already been established for, in the case of Alan Scott, what we're talking 80 years, 100 years,
80 years. Well, and the thing with North Star, at least Byrne created him, so do whatever you want. If he's your creation, that's the key for me. If he's your creation and you want to decide that 2 years later or 5 years later, whatever it was, by the way, he's gay, that's okay. And I have no problem with that with North Star. That's his creation, so that's cool. You're taking someone else's creation. And again, remember when the Screw 52 came out, and there was a big, they only made that Earth, what was it called, Earth 1 for some strange reason. Earth 1, Alan Scott, it was younger, not the Golden. They only made a big deal about him being gay for virtue signaling points, and so they could put it in. Remember, it made the news and all that stuff. And anyone who said, "Why are you doing that to Alan Scott?" got yelled at for called an istophobe. And then everyone, they said, "Look, it's not like he's the original. It's not like he's the Golden Age one or anything. And everyone went, "Okay, fine. He's not. He's some other Earth." Okay, well, guess what? Slope slipped, because now in the new issue of the Jobber. In the new issue of the 80th anniversary Green Lantern book, which I shouldn't buy current DC books, but I bought it because it has Denny O'Neil's last story in it. Went and picked it up yesterday, and even though I knew they were going to have this in there, the art's good in that story by Gary Frank, but they go ahead and basically just almost come out and say that the Alan Scott of the Golden Age is gay. Again, I don't care which characters are gay, but if you're retroactively doing it to a character you didn't create, I just think it's kind of crappy. It's not like we're ever going to see that Alan Scott again much anywhere, or that I'll be buying any of their comics anyway. So it's not like I'm angry. Oh, how dare you make him gay? Not that so much. I just think it's dopey, and it's done for virtue signaling points, and that's what comics are all about these days.
Well, when the Fant Four Stick movie came out, and they decided to make Johnny Storm gay. I mean, not gay, black. Right. And I was like. And I've made this point to other people and said, you can't make Johnny Storm black. And they're like, well, sure you can, it's just as valid as if he were white. And I was like, no, it's actually not. First of all, you don't make Sue Storm black. So you completely change the dynamic of the brother-sister relationship by having one of them be adopted. Because I'm sorry, even through adoption, blood is usually thicker. It usually pans out that way. And then on top of that, a black person's that's what we're learning through society right now, is that a black person's life is going to how he was raised and what the trials and tribulations they have to go through are going to be completely different from that of somebody who was white. I'm not even arguing that at that point of it. Then if that's the case, then how can you just race swap Johnny Storm and think it's going to be the same character? It can't be. You can't have it both ways. Either the race is going to drastically change the personality of the character, and make it a different character completely. In which case, it's no longer Johnny Storm, or or race swapping is no big deal and the experience is the same. You can't have writing in streets telling me one thing is right and then tell me the other thing is right as well. Somewhere along the line you can't have it either way, both ways. Which one you want to go with? I don't care. Let's figure it out now.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was because we're gonna probably have another Fantastic Four movie here somewhere in the next 5 years, and
God, no. Please
at least in the casting, at least in the casting, I'd hope they get it close.
Not a chance. Not a chance. Let me tell you something about that whole thing you're just talking about with Michael B. Jordan as the FF. Now, again, granted, it doesn't matter what color anybody is. That movie's so bad, it just didn't even. After the movie came out, no one cared. But anyone who said, "Hey, why are you changing Johnny Storm to a black guy?" got called the usual ists and all that stuff. Well, let me tell you who an ist is. I have a very dear friend of mine who is. You know how much you and I love the Fantastic Four. My friend J.A. Flood, who is not only an artist, he's a bit older than me even. He loves the Fantastic Four beyond all measure. He happens to be a black gay man who certainly politically he don't see an eye on anything together. And he was sickened by them doing that to Johnny Storm. He came out when I was kind of like trying to be, I didn't want to say much because I didn't want to get attacked. He came out and said, screw that. Johnny Storm is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy, and that's what he's supposed to be. I've read that comic all my life, and that's what he should be. This is, again, coming from a black gay man who says it's nothing about being racist. Just don't screw with characters or change them like that. And he's not the only black friend of mine who loves the Fantastic Four that said that. It's like, it's stupid. And just make your own characters. Don't change them. And anytime you make that argument, now they, of course, could get away with it. If you and I do it, your ists and all that kind of crap are our rights. My thing is if they like changing characters, are you going to change Blade's gender, race? How about Storm? How about Jon Stewart? No, seems like no, it's a one-way street. No, absolutely right. And even when you say that, they get angry with you, but because you're just being an isty. So yeah, all that kind of crap, and then changing. And even on the gay issue, he's also gay, and he didn't like it when people were talking all these rumblings about making, like the idiot Andrew Garfield wanted to play Spider-Man as gay, and he came out and said that's stupid. He's not gay, and just goes to show you, even fans who are of that ethnicity or that sexuality don't like the change either. They just want to read the comics the way they are. It's so dumb. So all that kind of PC crap is, but still, I still maintain that Soylent Green is people. I'm just saying, watch out for it. Those of you out there who have read comics for a long time, like us, we've talked for a while. We were talking about an artist who, if you those of you who look at the screen, that's Superman right there, as drawn by an artist named John Byrne. This is, of course, from a book that was published, early 80s, way before he ever got on the title, called The Art of John Byrne, cleverly enough. And this is my favorite drawing he ever did. I don't know if you ever saw any Byrne interviews, because we were going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk just for a minute, everyone, about the well, I can't say it's controversial anymore, but it was at the time, the 1986 John Byrne Superman reboot, which I did not like, and my friend Mark here did. This was years before that, and I remember reading an interview. I don't know if you ever read. Did you ever read his Comics Journal interview from the 1980 or something? When he was.
No, I've never read that one.
Oh man, if you ever get, because I love my collection of Comics Journals. If I can ever find you a copy of that, and I'm giving it to you, because you got to read it. And at that time I read it and I laughed my ass off. Comics Journal was, that was a long ass interview, and he offended just about everybody there was to offend. He pissed a lot of people off. Not me, actually. I was laughing at it. But he did talk. He was asked either in that interview, maybe in a different interview, but he was asked what character he wanted to work on the most. He said Superman. And at the time he said, like me, he loved Superman, the movie with Christopher Reeve, which I saw 18 times in the theater in 1978/79. He went a bunch of times himself. And they said, well, what would you do with him? He said he wanted to adapt the movie and go from there. That's kind of the way he wanted to do it. Of course, I guess even he had to know at the time that editors don't, DC editors or Marvel editors are big time sticklers for continuity. They won't let you just make up your own damn continuity. You would think they wouldn't anyway, or you still got to abide by certain. So in other words, they weren't going to let him do the movie. But anyway, many years have passed, and of course, as you know, he became a fan favorite. He took over the Fantastic Four for a number of years before that's after he left the X-Men and before he went to DC. And when he went to DC, they gave him kind of carte blanche. They were trying to get Alan Moore. Alan Moore had some crazy ideas to do with it, but at least Alan Moore got to do the last hurrah for the Golden and Bronze Age Superman, which is my all-time favorite Superman story, called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. But that was the ending of it. That was the ending of that one. And this was at a time, one of the things that aggravated me was we just went through a revamp called Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then they do another revamp right after it. Thank you, Iris. Great to see you there. And thank you for being there. I understand. Lurk away. I got you. I understand. But so DC had decided, I think obviously they did Crisis before they were going to get burned. And they revised their whole damn universe. Jeanette Kahn, who I was not a big fan of, and I had a lot of problems with Crisis because at the time they were saying, look, the DC universe is too confusing with all these multiple Earths and stuff. We're going to streamline it and merge all the Earths together. Well, there was nothing more confusing than merging a bunch of Earths together. I understood quite easily Earth 1 or 2, even though they had them named backwards. Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth X, Earth this, Earth that, Earth B for Bob Haney, you name it. I liked it that way. That's what Crisis, lovely art and all, pissed me off. It's like, why you're I don't know. Now, granted, it was tough to do, a comic character had been around for 30 and 40 years and they still stay the same age and they were up against problems like that and, all that kind of fun stuff. But then, ever those looking for the big payday, the big dollar sign, Byrne was a huge name. If there were remember back when there were superstars in comics? He was that.
I will give you one more than that. The idea of Byrne moving from Marvel to DC, what broke the internet before the internet was born. I mean, this is a phrase that Kevin Smith likes to use, but no, I mean, the announcement hit almost a year before Man of Steel #1 came out, and everyone's head exploded. And honestly, he left due to Jim Shooter. And the funny thing is that Shooter was ousted within 6 months of him leaving. So they both left. Yeah. And honestly, Marvel, there's a Marvel Comics on fan group on Facebook that goes from 1961 and ends at 86 when the two of them leave, because that's when at that point that's when the Image Boys start to make their own name.
That new universe thing really did Shooter in. But yeah, so anyway, back then when they had superstars in comics, Frank Miller, John Byrne, were probably the two biggest at the time. Before that, again, comics were so big back then, each era had their superstars. You had your Kirbys and you had your Neil Adams, people like that. And then in the 80s, you had Frank Miller, John Byrne, and so on. Those are easily the two biggest names. And remember, Miller had defected to DC before that.
Yep.
With a strange book called Ronin, which I was working in the comic shop at the time. Never was too big on Ronin personally, but I remember.
I love that book. It is so far.
It's weird stuff.
Well, this is one thing that as a comic book fan I've come to really appreciate is there is a almost European science fiction sensibility to Ronin. Stuff like the ankle, the rest of the Yodaverse stuff that's out there, a little bit of Valerian and Laureline. It really kind of brings about a European sensibility to that science fiction story. And because of that, I appreciate it for what it is.
No, I understand. We, as you know, when something like that is planned, we ordered. I tried, again, I didn't own the shop I worked at that point, and I got an argument with the owner. He wanted to order like something crazy, like, and remember, this is Baton Rouge in the early 80s. He wanted to order something like 500. I said, are you out of your mind? I talked him down to 300, and it should have been maybe 100. I said, look, he said, but it's Frank Miller. I said, yeah, but think about this for a minute. It's Frank Miller not doing Daredevil or not doing something. And I mean, he hadn't done Batman yet, but not doing a character. I said, you got to have the character to go along with the name I'm telling you. This is not like he's doing an X-Men book or doing or one of the DC's big names. This is a vanity project in a way. I said, it might be good. I'm not saying it's not going to be good. Dude. And a lot of people will buy it, but I'm saying 500 and with what we sell. So we got him down to 3, and boy, even still, we got stuck with Ronin #1 coming out the ass for years. I mean, a few people, sure. He said, you got to sell that book. I'm not selling crap. People are going to buy it and they're not going to buy it. I said, look, man. And he said, read it and tell them how good it is. I read it. I was like, I'm not going to sit here and tell people to buy a book I don't think is that good, man. Screw you. And we got in fights over it and stuff. But anyway, I didn't tell people not to buy it either. I just said, look, it's Frank Miller. Go for it. Read it for yourself. When they would say, should I buy this? Because it was pretty expensive. It was a very fancy format, as you know, for then. And I said, look, I think, again, this is the way I kind of adapted my style with anyone. I said, hey, man, I think you should read it for yourself and decide. Well, what'd you think of it? And they put you on the spot sometimes. I said, it's only the first issue. We'll see what's going on. I'm going to read them all. Shit like that. Because I don't want to tell anyone not to buy something or to buy something. I'm saying, however, fair enough. If it's something I really love, I am going to kind of hype it a little. But even still, that's almost as bad because they come in and say, yeah, you like it that much? I didn't think it was that. You can't win. So Miller, huge superstar, Byrne superstar. Byrne comes along, and I was again, at the time I was getting sick of his FF. I think his whole MO is when he writes stuff, he's never been like the greatest writer. He's good at some things. I think he's really good at writing Star Trek. That's something we'll talk about later. But I think he gets bored with stuff. I liked his FF for the first couple of years, and then you could tell he was just kind of bored. They gave him She-Hulk to play with, and he liked that so much he eventually went and did his own little series with that. But when he got a hold of Superman, this is a guy who said, and we'll start, July 4th of 1986, Man of Steel #1 came out, the miniseries. And first, again, I don't know why he ever, just like with FF, I don't know why he always thinks he should ink himself. John Byrne should have never been allowed to ink himself, ever. I love his art. I mean, sometimes he can do it if he's not in a hurry. But my God, Terry Austin, Joe Sinnott. I know we can't have Terry Austin and Joe Sinnott or Joe Rubenstein all the time, but it wasn't the art. The art was, fine. On here we got this book opens up. Anyone who has read Man of Steel #1, and of course the whole miniseries, Byrne had been talking a lot about it before it came out, and I was already pissed off at him because he came out and said these words. He said, well, someone said, so what are you going to do to Superman's origin? What are you going to do about his history? He said, nothing ever happened to Superman unless I say so. Fuck you, dude. Look, don't shit on whatever came. You don't have to like what came before. Don't get me wrong. I think you could ignore what came before, anything you don't like. And you could just even say, look, we're just kind of not even going to deal with it. It's going to be a whole new. I have no problem with that. But don't come out and shit on. Because later I've heard he's actually regretted what he did to Superboy, which is cool. People can regret things. But what gets me is he claims to love the first film, right? The Christopher Reeve film. Mm. And if you remember a scene when at the beginning of the Christopher Reeve film where Clark Kent, when he runs home at super speed and Paul Kent, played by Glenn Ford, tells him he's best showing off, and they have the little father-son talk. And he says, every time I get the ball, I could score a touchdown. And they talk for a while, and he eventually says, the one thing I do know, son, is that you are here for a reason. I don't know whose reason it is or what it is, but maybe it's because, I don't know. But I do know one thing. It's not to score touchdowns. And jackass John Byrne, who claims to love that movie, what does he do? He has Clark Kent playing fucking football. Talk about, this is a guy who's obsessed with realism to the point where he comes up with the interesting idea of the yellow solar battery and things like that. Fine, if you're going to really stress over realism, having a dude who playing football who has a force field around him basically and can't be tackled, you might not want to do that. And again, I'm going, look, dude, what is wrong with you? That was right there. He took me out of the book. I'm like, he already pissed me off. And then I'm like, that's fucking moronic. Maybe he thinks it is now. I don't know, because he's then he turns him into kind of super yuppie. He's kind of a self-absorbed yuppie type. I don't like any of that. The issue with Batman was pretty good. But overall, I was like, look, he's just, I don't like this iteration of Superman. I read it for a good while, and I just, quite frankly, forget about what he revised or not. I don't think he ever really did that many good stories or anything with it. And I don't know. Some people think he was trying to Marvelize Superman. That was a lot of people who were defending it, saying, "Oh, it's more like a Marvel character now. He's more realistic, or this, that, and the other. He's more of a real person." Okay, do good stories. But anyway, I'll give you the floor on it because I know you're a big fan. And again, we're not that. Look, I love a lot of his work. Okay, I'm just saying I didn't really like his take on it, and mainly because he never really did a lot of story. I mean, it's one thing to just screw over the older continuity, and I don't like that, but I don't think he ever really made it a very good book either in terms of like he did, when he was working with Claremont on X-Men or when he did his first couple of years of FF. But I know you were a big fan of it. We were a few years apart on that. Talk about a little bit about your views on John Byrne's Superman.
Well, first let me give you my history with the character, because I come to Superman not through comic books, but through other means of pop culture. Okay. My introduction to Superman was Super Friends, the George Reeves show,
yes,
the Filmation cartoon from the 60s, and the Superman one, not the Superboy one. I didn't see that for years after that, until after that.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the Christopher Reeve movie. After the Christopher Reeve movie came out, I begged my mother for we were in the pharmacy drugstore, and it was like, "Mom, can I have this? Look, Mom, Superman comic, Superman comic." And it had a cover. The cover was by Dick Giordano. It looked really interesting. It was Superman Family 190. Now, in there is a story with Superman. Okay, and I'm finding, but we need to establish that my foundation with Superman is that born on Krypton, Jor-El and Lara send him away as Krypton explodes, lands in Smallville, not Kansas as of that point, grows up to move to Metropolis to work at the Daily Planet with Perry, Jimmy, Lois, and when the trouble arises, he becomes Superman. Yeah. That's what I know of the character. Okay. Now imagine picking up a book in '78 and realizing that, hey, nobody works at the Daily Planet anymore.
Wasn't that the if a Superman Family, wasn't it the Earth 2 Superman?
No, this was Superman.
Okay.
He works, at that point, he's actually gone and started working as a television reporter or anchor.
Yes, WGBF.
And Jimmy's on his own adventures. He's and then there's a dog with a cape I've never seen before, because I never saw that Superboy cartoon, and I never read Superboy comic book. So when you see a flying dog with a cape, you're kind of like, what am I looking at? And I've got a bottled city with a story with Nightwing and Flamebird, are two characters that I don't understand. So and Lois is in the bottle. So what I've got is a Superman comic book that contains absolutely no foundation. Superman was actually in the book, the story he has, it's off planet. So there's no foundation for me to put my feet on to build all this other information that they're giving me to build it on. There's no foundation. The foundation has been changed from what I know. Okay, that happened somewhere in the early to mid '70s before I ever started reading comic books or even picked up my first comic book. So I have no foundation upon which to build. And I didn't pick up another comic book again until 1980, Superman comic again until '85. Because I was, as a 5-year-old reading this, I'm like, even just if you're just looking at the picture, I'm lost. I don't understand what I'm looking at. So I had no entry into the comic book. Somebody at some point in time had lost that Mort Weisinger edict, which was every comic book is somebody's first. I know people attribute it to Jim Shooter, but it actually goes back to Mort Weisinger. True.
That is true.
I start reading in '83. I start off with licensed material like G.I. Joe and Transformers. Quickly move over to Avengers and X-Men. Find out about John Byrne's run on X-Men, and I'm blown away with what this man can do with a pencil.
Great stuff.
Pick up his short run on Avengers, pick up his short run on Captain America, pick up his run on Iron Fist. start getting every Fantastic Four issue that he is involved in up to current. And then Alpha Flight, which is a spinoff of X-Men. I'm deep into that.
Yeah.
Byrne leaves Alpha Flight and goes to the Incredible Hulk. And
like
the first issue,
yeah.
6 issues, but
6.
it was only, and he does the first issue. The first issue looks amazing. His version of the Hulk is something I've never seen before, but he's more monstrous and looks more like a Hulk that I would expect to see, even more. And it's nothing against the artists that have come before him. It's just that he somehow has a blend in his art that's almost a perfect mashup of Kirby and Neil Adams.
Mm-hmm.
At least for my taste.
No, that's been said a lot. I totally agree with it. When he's at his best. Yeah.
So after that first issue comes out is when news is that Byrne's leaving Marvel. He's going to write and draw Superman. Well, if you ever look at the way Byrne draws, and he's been criticized for this, Byrne draws his male superhero faces. They're all pretty similar, and especially at this point in the game. But if you put that black hair with that spit curl on it, gosh darn, it looks like a Superman face. And when you hear he's going to draw Superman, mind explodes. So I've got about a year's worth of and I don't know when this is happening. I just know that I got when I go to pick up the 7th issue of the Incredible Hulk, he's no longer on it. So, well, if he's not doing this, then maybe he's already started Superman. So I go to pick up the issue of Superman and no. But so I pick up probably maybe almost a year's worth of Superman leading up to this, including the Alan Moore story, which is a very nice send off for that character.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah.
So we get to Man of Steel, #1, finally comes out in summer. And what I get is a foundation I did not have with this character the first time I picked it up. Now, it's not a perfect comic by any stretch of the imagination. As far as the football goes, if you look at the score on the scoreboard, there is no way, shape, or form you could come up with that score, no matter whether.
What was it? I don't remember. What was it?
Hold on a second. I got it right in front of me.
Oh, you got it in front of you?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. What was it? Jesus. I haven't seen that in a while.
52 points. And he's running for his 10th touchdown of the day.
Yeah, that's a record there. He's in the NFL right there for sure. He is the NFL.
But you also have to remember that as much as the town is praising him for his ability to play football, he leaves that game with his dad. And that's when they have the talk. And his dad is both disappointed in Clark, but not really, but disappointed in himself for kind of letting it go as far as it has. In the fact that he let him play the football, that he let him do this with his powers, take advantage of his powers to play football. So what you're upset about is actually addressed, I feel, well enough in the comic book, at least to move on and call it a prologue and move on into the meat of the story.
Well, again, I think I'm basing it mostly on the fact that he himself said he loved the movie and said he wanted to do the movie. So I was like, that seems very contradictory. I mean, it may be a minor point, but it started out on a bitter note with that for me. But I also didn't like all that space shuttle stuff at the end and everything, whatever. But I hear you, and please continue.
I don't know, because in Superman Returns, the saving of that plane is the only part of that movie that's worth watching, and that is that scene almost to a T.
Visually, it's pretty good. Yeah. I hear you.
So, but what we also get by the time we get to the end of Man of Steel and we start getting into his run, and I'm not going to say his run was lit Superman on fire. There haven't been a whole lot of amazing Superman stories in the last 40 years. There really haven't. There have been some highlight issues. The Alan Moore's 2-parter that ended the Bronze Golden Age Superman. The annual he did for the man who has everything. For the man who has everything. Yeah, Loeb did Superman for All Seasons.
I like that. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Some people love All-Star Superman. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of it, but there are parts of it that I love. but finding a really good, strong Superman. So all I ask for a Superman story is to be fun and don't be so dour. One of the problems Superman's had, especially since DiDio had come in, was everyone's trying to figure out what makes Superman Superman. And it's like, you guys are way overthinking this character. Just tell cool Superman stories. You don't have to go into the psychology of all this. He's just Superman.
Yeah,
and
don't
that's
be a downer.
And that's what I felt I got from Byrne. Was Byrne just told Superman stories. Some were good, some not so good. Some I thought were really good. The one he did in Superman 4 with the with Bloodsport, and then find out that his Bloodsport talks about how, me and Mickey back in the thick of Nam, and then you find out that he was a deserter, and it's his brother that went in his place, and his brother lost his legs, and Bloodsport is actually just messed up because of the fact that because of his cowardness, his brother had lost his legs, and when faced with his brother at the end of this massacre that he's perpetrated on Metropolis, he just breaks down. And that was a really, really good issue by Byrne. I thought that was one of the best issues I thought he did. And then there was the Legends 3-parter where Byrne goes to the Apocalypse and loses his memory and winds up being reprogrammed by Granny Goodness and becoming Darkseid's.
They adapted that and they adapted that in the animated series, didn't they?
Sort of, a little bit.
A little bit.
Orion and Light Ray have to come in and use a mother box to kind of set his brain straight, and then at that point he's pissed. He wants Darkseid's head, and then Darkseid's like, "I'm not ready for this. I'm sending you back to Earth." So there are some good stories in there, but most importantly, there's just fun Superman stories in there. The art is incredible, and as far as the changes that were made, I can understand that if you were a Bronze Age Superman fan and even back into the Silver Age, to lose the Super Family and the Superboy aspect, and which also ties into the Legion of Superheroes, becomes a problem for you. But I didn't have any of that. All I knew was Superman. So for me to take that out of the story is fine by me, because it was never part of my story to begin with. So what I've got is a Superman, and then I've got a more relatable Superman, in that the Superman from Golden Age up until that last story by Alan Moore is the man, and Clark is the affectations, the disguise he puts on, so that nobody realizes he's Superman. Whereas in Byrne's run, and this is where they say, oh, it's more like a Marvel character, Clark is Clark. He puts on the costume to go save people. And he puts the glasses on, so maybe people won't, so people don't recognize he's Superman. But Clark is the man. Superman is the put on to go save people. And so he kind of flips the script on the character and how the character is looked at. And, as much as I enjoy this Fortress of Solitude, I enjoyed the idea that Ma and Pa Kent staying alive and being the sounding board for him to talk to made for a better Fortress of Solitude for me, which was why they were kept in. They were to be his fortress. Go back to Smallville and talk to Ma and Pa was to be his fortress.
Yeah. Well, again, some of that I don't have a problem with. I really just think he never really did a good job on the character, but it is sort of like what you're saying. My biggest problem is him coming along and saying, that stuff you guys loved as kids, go screw yourself. Fuck you. It didn't happen. I don't like when anyone takes the creations of others and shits all over them. Does something different with them is different, and I'm fine with it. But one thing I'll definitely agree with you on is there haven't been a lot of great Superman stories, or Superman, more importantly, stories, runs. You mentioned the Moore stuff. Alan Moore, to me, did the greatest long run of Superman ever. It just was under an assumed name. It was called Supreme. His Supreme was as if he was given in Superman before Byrne took over, and got to do his own thing with it for a good number of years, and did it for a nice long time. And I loved it. And that was him keeping it fun and stuff. But one of my things that I did sort of, it's weird because you think I would hate it, but I actually did at this point, right? Not too long after Byrne started, that it was bittersweet, but I was going to lose my Legion anyway. I was losing my Superboy anyway. And this wasn't all Byrne, but he did have something to do with it because I've heard him say later that he's kind of wish he hadn't done this to Superboy. The 4-parter, or whatever it was, when they killed the quote-unquote pocket universe Superboy, the one I grew up with and loved, in the Legion that crossed over from Superman in Action to the 2 issues of the Legion.
Yeah, with the time
Superboy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a time trapster,
Yes.
something like that.
Yes. That, as much as you'd think I would be angry by it, look, I knew he was going to be leaving anyway. It was Byrne and it was Levitz. And they gave my Superboy, who did not deserve to die. Nevertheless, it was a really touching comic that I loved and very well done. So at that time, I'm a young adult. I was just south of 22 years old when this happened, and I was getting something. I was getting screwed, and so I really, after giving Byrne's early run, buying it for a while, giving it a shot, I eventually just dumped it. And of course, I got married to a woman at the time who was a big Superman fan who didn't care about hardly any other titles. I would go get my comics every week, and I had to buy Superman titles for her. And this is when I dumped them, right? And I'm like, shoot, no, you got to get them for her. I'm like, ugh. So she'd get pissed off at me because I'd bring them home and I would bitch and moan about them because I didn't want to read them anymore. This was a good while, really close to the point where he was about to leave the book because, he didn't stay on it a whole long time. And anyway, he
about
2 years, right?
About 2 years.
Couple years.
He did two books he was writing and drawing, and then for the second year he wrote the third book. So I mean, all in told, he probably did about 5 years worth of Superman stories.
Right. And when I was really just wanted to stop, I was not allowed to because I had to buy my comics. She only read those and like 2 or 3 other titles. She didn't read a lot of comics, but she had to have Superman, probably just to annoy me. And so I would have them in my house. And I would read them. I would pick them up, and she was the kind. She didn't collect comics. She read them, so I could take it and throw it across the room. She wouldn't give a crap. So I would have to. I had to read it for. I would, me, if it's sitting there, I'm gonna freaking read it. And I was getting mad all the time when I didn't want to collect it. But at that point I was getting mad at almost all the DC books anyway. It came to a point a few years after that.
Excuse me.
I was dropping. I'd almost dropped most of Marvel. I'd almost dropped most of DC. I was buying mostly independent stuff at that point. See, again, you're in your early 20s, and they had a lot of great books.
See, I wish that with Crisis was really my ability, and Byrne moving over, I moved over to DC. That was really my entry into DC because and it's not that I didn't know the DC before then. It was that those characters have been around so long, they had forgot to allow new readers really an entry point, is the way I kind of felt about it. I had a couple of issues of Aquaman that Don Newton had done. I had a couple issues of Green Lantern, Green Arrow once Mike Grell had taken over, and and so I mean and I had this couple issues of Brave and the Bold.
Nice.
One with the Creeper that Jim Aparo had done, and I think there was a backstory with a Human Target in it, and so I mean I had read some DC, and they just, I don't know, it was just kind of like you really kind of felt like you were trying to always play catch up, and this was the ground floor for me to get down on, to get on, so I could go up with it. Now there were things that were done that I really wished I hadn't. Like, I love Mike Grell's run on Green Arrow and the prequel he did, the Longbow Hunters.
Yeah. Nice.
But if I had my druthers, I would have everybody dressed looking exactly like they do in that 1982 Jose Luis Garcia Lopez style guide, and never move off of it, because that is the look of DC. It should always be the look of DC. When when I see Superman without his trunks, it drives me insane. The fact that they finally gave him back to him in the comic books was something that made me happy, and everyone's like, oh, you know, those trunks are from the strongmen of the 30s and 40s. You know, that's an outdated principle. I was like, really? Have you watched the WWE recently? Because those are the strongmen of today, and guess what they wear? They wear trunks.
Dude, look at that costume. Forget about whatever I say about Byrne. That drawing right there that I'm looking on my screen. That's my favorite Byrne of Super. Not only my favorite Byrne drawing of Superman. Kurt Swan's my favorite Superman artist, but that might be my favorite look of drawing and paint and coloring of Superman of all time. That costume is perfect. It's the greatest superhero costume, and as a geek, I love superhero costumes. That's why I love the Legion of Superheroes so much. That costume is freaking perfect, and if you take that red out of that middle, it just disrupts it, and especially when they make them the rest dark and nasty and ridgy. I hate that.
It's a lot of blue. It's a lot of blue.
That is that's a beautiful piece of work right there.
Well, I remember running into you after the New 52 started, and I was a bit of a smartass about it because you and I have had this the rumblings of the Byrne Superman talk for years. And I showed you the New 52 Superman and the costume, and I said, I bet Byrne's looking like a nice warm tropical breeze about now, doesn't he? And I hated that New 52 costume, and I'm hoping little by little I start seeing more and more red creep into it, like the Shazam appearance. Even though it's not Cavill, it's a stuntman in the costume. There's a little more red around the middle that wasn't there before, and it's like, boy, if they could just put the trunks back on him and put Cavill in that costume, I'd be a pretty happy dude.
Look, give those trunks. I remember, it's funny. So you know how sometimes you never know how well off you are. Remember when the stupid Superman Returns came out? A lot of us were bitching about that costume. I mean, yes, it had the trunks at least, for God's sake, but it was dark and dingy, and I did not like it. I mean, hell, I'll take it over what that body condom that they put Cavill in, but I mean, it was still not right. So Cavill, of course, would be, just give him that right costume, please. They'll never.
Well, and one of the things that they seem to get wrong, and I've got to blame Hollywood for not paying attention, is when Clark, at least in the films, when Clark is being Clark, his hair is parted on the wrong side, or on the right side of his head.
Yeah.
Okay. When he's Superman, the hair is parted like where most men's natural part is, on the left side. Both Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill, when they part their hair on the right side, which is the Clark Kent side. And when they go to style their hair to be Superman, they leave it there. And it doesn't look right. You have to go from the other side, because otherwise the spit curl doesn't look right. So it drives me. It's just little things like that just drive me insane.
Yeah, and that's that's right. That's another thing. The damn S on Brandon Routh was way too damn small. And that just dingy color to his costume, I couldn't stand that. There were a lot of people that were photoshopping that to make it brighten the colors of it, which was nice, but they were not in the movie. But so.
I've seen a Photoshop version of Henry Cavill in the costume where they photoshopped they brightened up the red and then photoshopped the trunks on, and he looked damn good.
Oh yeah,
he looked damn good.
No, absolutely. The casting. This is one time, because Zack Snyder is the same moron who cast Ezra Miller as Barry Allen because he was idiotic. But to be fair to him, he also got Cavill, and as much as Momo is no Aquaman, he's likable, and he cast, and you can't argue with success. He cast a guy that people like. So, and actually, most of his castings have been good. I have we won't get into it necessarily, but I have a lot of problems with his Watchmen movie. But most of the casting in that one is great. Jackie Earle Haley, Patrick Wilson.
Yeah. Patrick Wilson would be my Mr. Fantastic if I was going to make a Fantastic Four movie. I think it'd be perfect. Dude.
I'm with you.
My biggest problem with the Watchmen movie is that, at least up until, say, the final issue 12, it's a pretty faithful adaptation of that comic book. The only problem is I don't care. It just seems like there's no emotional weight to the movie. It's just I'm watching a series of scenes as it plays out. just like it did in the comic book. There's no emotional weight to it at all. So by the time you have Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach screaming at Dr. Manhattan, "Do it!" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, please just do it so we can get out of here."
I tell you though, because I've always been such a big fan and always loved the original and only Watchmen series so much. There are some pluses that are hard to deny about the film, and most of it is in the casting. Seeing some, Jackie Earle Haley, Patrick Wilson, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and those three in particular. Seeing some of the set pieces and scenes that look just like the comic are really nice. Totally agree with you about the emotional thing. Another thing is the movies really crapped on. They ruined Rorschach's origin scene. The stupid crap with him just chopping the guy up. That was stupid. They ruined some other things in the film by, some of the fight scenes are really stupid. Rorschach falls 5 stories, and in the comic, breaks his legs and gets the shit kicked out of him. In this one, he jumps up and goes Bruce Lee on 20 cops. What is wrong with you, Hack Steiner? Did you read the goddamn comic? And other scenes with Night Owl and Silk Spectre flying around, that's floating like they're in the Matrix or something. The whole point of Watchmen was, in the real world, these characters and these costumes would be clunky and clumsy, and they can't fight like Batman, okay? They don't look like graceful superheroes when they fight. They look like ordinary people. He forgot that, and to have some stupid stylistic fight scenes, it takes me out of it, and then, of course, ruining the ending. But, again, I started a whole, in 2009, that was half the reason I started my podcast, to bitch about that friggin' movie. Or a quarter of the reason, anyway. But, anyway, Hack Snyder, he did some good casting, and he also gave us Ezra Miller. God, I hope they get rid of him. He is horrible. Ugh, he's the worst thing in Justice League to me.
Well, I don't like my superheroes choking out women in real life. I just don't. That's me.
Well, that either. Yeah, well, yeah, of course. Yeah, with you. But he's terrible.
And he's playing Barry Allen as if Barry had Wally's personality,
or even Bart. He's terrible. Huh?
Yeah. Talking about the Man of Steel movie, I watch a lot of YouTube, and to hear people like I have a whole lot of respect for Robert Meyer Burnett. John Campea backing him has given me more respect for John Campea, while
Agreed.
Robert has been canceled.
Agreed.
But both of them will claim that Man of Steel is this masterpiece. And
oh my God.
I just want to put my head through a wall. All right, I have to set the stage for this scene because it bothers me. These two scenes bother me so much. All right, it's the tornado scene where we're gonna lose Pa Kent.
Ugh.
Okay, and they're in the car. It's the three of them and the dog, and they see the tornado start to form. They open the doors and then they run away, realizing they left the dog in the car. Now, have you ever owned an animal?
Yes.
Okay. Animals have a fight or flight instinct. When that door opens, dogs can smell bad weather. Dogs can have a sense of bad weather coming. If you ever want to know when the rainstorm's coming, take your dog outside. When he starts eating grass, you got a thunderstorm coming.
Yeah.
So
good point.
A dog knows when bad weather's coming. When the door's open to that car, the dog is not going to care about its owners. The dog is gone. You will find him tomorrow somewhere in the next county because he is going to have run off. He does not care. He's going to survive. That's what he's going to do. He's not staying in the car. There's no staying in the car for that dog. It's not an option. Ma Kent opens the door, the dog is gone. Okay? That's reality. If we're going to do a realistic take on Superman, let's deal with reality, and that's reality.
Yeah.
Second of all, if I am a father of a son, a husband to a wife, and the breadwinner of my family, responsible for myself and these two other individuals and making sure they are fed, clothed, and can live. I've loved every pet I've ever had, but if it's between my family and going back to get the family dog, pardon my French, but fuck the dog.
Maybe the dog can't sense cartoon tornadoes. Maybe that's it.
I don't know, but even still, if it, you know, if I gotta huddle my family and or worry about the family pet, the pet is gone. I love that dog. I'm gonna miss him.
No, that's right. That's priorities. Absolutely. Man, I
But the
love that.
dog is gone. So the scene
Yeah.
should never have happened that way. Never
No.
have happened that way.
Maybe it was crypto in disguise, and he is not scared. He's not scared of cartoon tornadoes. It was so, as much as I would be tempted to let idiot Kevin Costner fly into a tornado, it's just so stupid in every single way. It's antithetical to Superman. That whole scene. But you know, I hate Man of Steel so much. I mean, we've dedicated so many hours to trashing it.
Well, we're gonna give you another 2 minutes as I talk about the other scene that's so badly written it drives me up the wall, which is the scene at the end of the movie after the Kryptonians have all been taken care of, and we've watched a lot of people and a lot of damage to the point to where you're just like, wow, that was a lot. We're in the middle of the desert with the general and Carol Ferris and Superman crashes a drone right in front of them and gets out. And then gets pissed, and it's like, are you crazy? Do you know how much that's worth? And Superman says, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out where I hang my hat. And I'm happy to help, but it's got to be on my terms. And then he says, well, how do we know you'll have America's best, our nation's best interest at heart? And he says, General, I was raised in Kansas. I'm as American as it gets. Now, if you just crash a satellite because you're trying to keep them from figuring out who you are and where you live, and you just had the military in Smallville, Kansas, with you and a bunch of these aliens running roughshod over a town. You know, I know military intelligence is supposed to be an oxymoron, but even the military can figure out, well, she says he's born and raised in Kansas. I say we start that little town, Smallville, Kansas, where they just blew the place up. I think it's a good place to start to figure out where we can find Superman. And I was like, what are you writing? What are you writing? What is this? You say you don't want him to know where you are, but then you give him every indication on where to find you? And it's like, did you really just write that?
It's so bad. It's also so un-Superman-like. Superman would simply come to them and say, look, I want to help. Superman, look, he's not Batman for a reason. He comes to the authorities and says, look, I want to help you. You guys, he doesn't come to them and basically translation say, look, see this satellite? That's your skull if you fuck with me. I'll help you guys out, but don't cross me because I can just wreck you with a pinky. And it was threatening. It was just not, it was strong arm tactics. It was like a bully. It wasn't Superman. It's not, of course, none of the movie was Superman. The 2 times he acts like Superman in the film, at the beginning when he saves the dude on the rig, okay. As a young Clark, when they flash back to him saving the kids on the bus, okay. And both times he acts like a Mr. Mopey about it, and Paul Costner, conspiracy kook, tells him he probably shouldn't have saved the kids. So the movie sends all kinds of terrible, horrible messages. You know, the Superman is Superman not because of his powers, but because of his values. And it's just Hack Snyder's a nihilist. And so was David S. Goyer. And, you know, he said look, you can say what you want about Christopher Nolan, people who love him and stuff. This is kind of Nolan's fault. He wanted Snyder. Snyder came out, even said he didn't like Superman. He was on record as saying he didn't care about him. Boy, did he prove it. And why that piece of shit got greenlit in the first place. You know, well, again, and look, it showed them. They didn't even learn their lesson. They made BVS and still. Let me tell you something about BVS, folks. You should theoretically be able to put a movie, make a 2-hour film with 2 guys, if they look right, playing Batman and Superman, playing tiddlywinks for 2 hours and stumble over $1 billion. And they couldn't even do that. Because, that year or so leading up to BVS, Bitch versus Shit, coming out, because of where I worked at the time, there was a lot of people there, and they all knew my geek stuff. I do a show and all this other kind of crap. They all know I'm into that stuff. I cannot tell you how many times when they started seeing the title, Batman versus Superman, they would come up to me and goes, hey, what is this Batman versus Superman stuff? I thought they were both good guys. Why are they fighting? Now, that's just, Joe Schmo who doesn't follow this stuff. Joe Public would come up and say, I don't get it. Why would they fight? They're supposed to be friends, aren't they? I mean, they're supposed to be good guys. They didn't understand it. Now, comic geeks get it, even though it's still stupid. But the general public starts out with a bad taste in their mouth because they think Batman is going to be fighting Superman. I don't get that. Why? And, well, look, it comes out, barely makes any kind of real money, and then Captain America Civil War destroys it. Because in that movie, the heroes, and again, I have a lot of problems with that film, at least in that one, the heroes are heroes. And they fight.
It comes down to context.
Big time.
It comes down to context. Not only that, but Batman v Superman was the second film out, and your introduction to Batman, where in Captain America, you'd already had 2 films with of Captain America standalone. Plus, I think you'd had, two Avengers films as well.
Films. You had a lot of foundation.
And so, you have a foundation to establish these characters and love for these characters, so that when you finally get to a conflict that they have against each other, you really care about what's happening and what happens to who and why.
Yeah.
And when you come out with Batman v Superman as your second film, you haven't had enough time. Hell, we don't even have a real Superman yet. And everyone's like, well, this is his origin. He's just becoming Superman. So you kind of have to give him a little leeway for snapping Zod's neck. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out why Zod wasn't able to burn the family in the corner in the train station, because I always thought eyes had ocular movement. You weren't like fixed in your head. You don't have to turn your neck to look at something. You can move your eyeballs. Why wouldn't his heat vision move with his eyes, not necessarily with his head? And And it's like, so if he looks at the family's dead. It doesn't have anything to do with holding back his head and breaking his neck.
Absolutely. Did you know that Nolan was against that killing?
No, I didn't know that.
Nolan was and I'm not that surprised by it. Christopher Nolan, I have a lot of issues with him here and there. Christopher Nolan had to be dragged kicking and screaming by idiot Dan DiDio and Zack Snyder. He said, no, Superman won't break anybody's neck. They talked him into it. And if you know, it makes sense if you look at his film, The Dark Knight. Batman could have easily killed the Joker and does not. And even though I don't like The Dark Knight Retires, in fact, I hate it, there is a scene in there where he tells Catwoman, who's about to kill somebody, says, we don't kill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, and just like Jim Gordon said in my opinion, the greatest Batman movie ever made, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, he says, the Batman does not kill, period. And, I'm all for that. And Superman is more so that, because he has superpowers and he's made a code, he won't kill. And Superman's so smart and powerful, he can get away from, the real Superman finds ways around killing.
Whenever he can. Everyone wants to say, well, in Superman 2, he killed the villains. And it's
he didn't.
He
didn't.
You apparently have never seen the Donner cut of this movie where they get taken off in handcuffs. Now, he damages them quite heavily, but they walk out. They're at least alive when this whole thing is said and done.
Exactly. He did not kill the villains in that movie. And to be fair to Byrne, here's one fair to Byrne. Byrne, at least he did have him kill the Phantom Zone villains in his comic. And then DC, it's funny, DC went back and kind of they kind of glossed over, said no, they weren't dead, right?
They were pocket villain. They're pocket universe villains. They were another pocket. They were big on pocket universes. So when it came to bringing the villains back, they were just, that's for pocket universe villains. That he killed. They weren't the villains for this universe. Zod is still in the Phantom Zone. He can come out and be Zod again, which they wound up doing. You were talking about good runs on Superman. I thought that the death of Superman in Return was a pretty good run on the book. I thought the book kind of didn't know what to do with itself. And I think part of the problem was the Lois and Clark TV show, because they were trying to keep everything happening with the wedding so that the TV show and the book would work at the same time. There is a run. It starts off with Jeff Johns and Richard Donner doing Last Son of Krypton.
I remember that.
And then goes into Bizarro World with Eric Powell of Goon fame. And then I think at that point Gary Frank comes on. They do a Legion of Superheroes story, which I thought was fantastic. Yeah. And then they do the Brainiac storyline, which was also amazing, which became an animated movie. That run done by Jeff Johns is probably my favorite run of the comic book since Byrne left. And
I remember,
it has
go ahead, sorry.
everything to do with A, it's a Superman story, and B, it was a fun read.
John's has done some good things, but I think that one I kind of liked for a while, but Jesus, he opened up like one thing about Johns is he'll write something good, but something he will write will lead to all kind of other bad ramifications. Like, for example, he did that, and eventually every it moved into that stupid thing where there were 10 billion Kryptonians moved on the Earth, or not 10 billion. You know what I'm saying? 10,000 or whatever. In other words, and now Jor-El's back. I'm like, what? What? But Jor-El needs to be dead. Okay.
But the funny thing about the New Krypton storyline was it wasn't even all John's. He started that storyline and then he left to go to Secret Origin with Gary Frank, which is but it could how good could that storyline have been if he was the author behind the whole thing, as opposed to handing it over to James Robinson, who is going to have a completely different sensibility on where that story is going to wind up going, and And the biggest issue with that, I felt, was that it just went on forever. If you want to go buy the trades to New Krypton, I think there's 6 of them. So each one is at least 4 to 5 issues or 6 issues a piece. And we're talking like at least 2 years worth of storylines. I have such a problem with long-term storytelling. Wow. I don't mind, I look at something like Marvel with female Thor. And Jane Foster as Thor, and it's like, I didn't have a problem with the idea of the storyline, but it lasted for 3.5 years. This is something you could have done in 3 months. It's like, well, you had Thor be a frog, and it's like that lasted over 2.5 issues. Right. This is going on for 3.5 years. I mean, comic readers have been made and broken in 3.5 years.
You've touched on something that really, before the Screw 52 came along in 2011 and chased me away from comics for about a year, because I left DC for almost 12 years, and then when Johns did Green Lantern Rebirth and fixed the horrible damage of Parallax and all that horrible crap they did to Hal Jordan, I came back around the 04 range, whatever it was, and I read DC and bought a lot of them again, even though Marvel wasn't all that good, I didn't think. They had a lot of good comics that I liked, and somewhere around 9-ish or somewhere up in there, everything started to be events again. Everything was an event. There was Blackest Day, Brightest Night, all this other Brightest Day, Blackest Night, excuse me, and all these other event things that were crossovers. For a while there, we had a lot of good closed stories, and then we went into these year-long events, just like you were talking about. And so before the Screw 52, I was dropping a lot of books because I got sick of everything being a crossover and an event. When for a while there, man, you had some Tomasi's run on Nightwing was really good. Paul Dini on Detective, it was fantastic. For a while there.
The one issue he did, I don't know who the artist on it was. It may have been Don Kramer. It may have been somebody else. But it was an issue. It was a Christmas issue where the Joker kidnaps Robin.
Yeah.
And Robin is stuck in the car with the Joker where Joker's on a murder spree. And if you go back, it was a Paul Dini story. You go back and read that story. That was an amazing one-issue story, one and done. And I miss the days back in Marvel where it seemed like, and Byrne was good at this, and so were like Walt Simonson and other people who were writing at the time, of doing 3-issue arcs where if you picked up a book, you may have the beginning, the end of one story, the beginning of another story. And then you just didn't worry about the story that you were missing. And then you had the middle issue. You picked up the next issue. That was the meat of the story that just began in the issue beforehand. And then you picked up the issue after that, and it ended that story and began the next story. And it just kept overlapping that way. And it was usually, basically, you had 2-issue storylines that just continuously overlapped.
Right.
And so you never got stuck on one particular thing for too long. And you always had the hook of the prologue for the next story in the comic book that finished the previous story. So you just couldn't get out. You were stuck, and you didn't care because you wanted the next issue.
I think Batman lends himself better to short. That's why Batman animated series is so wonderful. He lends himself, in my opinion, better to short stories. I missed the short story. Again, I came up at a time where most, when I was young, and again, when I was, I don't want to sound like the old dude sitting on the porch. I'm just saying, distribution was as such before there were comic shops. They didn't do a lot of long multi-saga stories. They happened, but for the most part, they knew that this, if you were buying them off of spinner racks or drugstore racks, you might not be able to follow a whole story. It might hurt sales. So that with the advent of the comic shop, that kind of changed a little bit. But something about the short and sweet story. That's why Batman animated series is so great. And he lends himself better to that. Denny took detective for a while. As we all know, he was one of the writers and creators of Batman animated series. He did that story, for example, that running thing where he had the Riddler as a detective, which I thought was really good. He did shorter stories, like some short closed stories in Detective of Batman that were great at that time. I don't know if there are trades on those now. I don't know. And I just like those better. I like shorter stories. I don't think you needed everything to be a 90,000 issue epic. Now, of course, that was when editors were really telling people, you got to write for the trade, write for the trade, write for the trade. If anyone doesn't know what that means, it means you can't do anything with a 2-issue or a 1-issue story. If you drag a story out and pad it out, you can compile 5, 6, 7 issues into a trade paperback, something that people inaccurately often call graphic novels, and then you can market it and sell it. And that's something that comic book editors have been telling writers and artists to do for a while, which became annoying for me. But then what do I know? I just wanted to see one shot sometimes. I wanted to see shorter stories. And I didn't want to have to buy. Dude, I'm such an idiot. I bought all the crossovers for Blackest Night like a jackass. And I was embarrassed with myself, man. I was like, what is wrong with me?
Well, for a crossover event, if you're going to do a crossover event, Blackest Night's a good one. Okay. All right. That had a good story behind it, and it involved the entire DC universe. And if you're going to do one, then great. But you can't go from Blackest Night and say,
Brightest Day.
Now we're going to do a big crossover event called Brightest Day.
Right after it.
Yeah. And it's like, you just milked me for 4 months. For 4 months of every issue that DC puts out. And I gladly ate it up like it was candy. And because it was a good story. But now you're going to come at me again and have me do this again. And Marvel was even worse. We went from Civil War to Secret Invasion to Fear Itself to Siege to, I don't know. It was just one Avengers versus X-Men to Original Sin. I mean, it didn't stop. It didn't stop for like 4 years. It didn't stop. And you're just like, at what point does a writer on a book actually get a chance to establish their character and actually write stories? Never. And I was like, I couldn't work. And I was like, I could never work for this. I got to tell you, when 9/11 hit, okay, at that point, Marvel had gone through about a 3-year rebirth where everything was clicking. Okay, you had the Fantastic Four was pretty good with I think Claremont was writing it, or Scott Lobdell, one of the two. It went from one to the other.
Yeah,
and the book wasn't excellently drawn, but it was well written. You had Kurt Busiek with George Perez on Avengers. You had Wade and Garney back on Captain America.
Right.
Then you had Byrne on X-Men Hidden Years, filling in that gap where you had nothing but reprints for 15, 20 issues.
Yes.
He was doing that span of time, and that book was fun. It wasn't a great book, but it was a fun book, and it wasn't hurting anything. Then you had Byrne and Garney doing the Hulk. You had Dan Jurgens and John Romita Jr. doing some of his best art on Thor. And then 9/11 hits, and then all of a sudden, the actions of superheroes and the villains and the fights they have to have consequences. So we have a fight in one issue, and then we have to have 6 issues of repairing the city and feeling bad about what we did. And does the superhero need to go to jail for having caused a lot of this damage, even though, he's supposed to be the superhero? And it's like, what happened here? This was when real life started to creep into the book.
Yes.
And then somewhere along the line, this wasn't enough. And then we had to put, well, I have ideas on what the world should be and how we should act. Not that are true to the character, but are true to me. And I'm going to bestow my values upon the character. And then all of a sudden, that's when we started getting identity politics in some of these books. And I didn't notice until after Age of Ultron, the movie came out, and I went to go pick up an issue of the Avengers, and it was the new All Different Avengers. And I looked, and Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hawkeye, and the Incredible Hulk were all gone. And they had all been replaced by somebody that was that was either a different gender, a different race, and they had been completely gender. And then I start, wait a minute, everybody that has been swapped was all straight, white, and male. And I'm like, okay, you do this one, it maybe you've just got a cool storyline and it's something cool. And I have no problem with the idea of Sam Wilson becoming Captain America for a little bit. It's no big deal. Same thing with Jane Foster as Thor. But then you're like, maybe 2 of these things, yeah, that would be a coincidence. But it's 5. No, I'm throwing the penalty flag here. This is an agenda. This is an agenda. And then once it became known that it was an agenda, then they're just like, you don't like our politics, don't buy our books. And like,
mission accomplished. Right. Yeah, you got it.
Mission accomplished. Now you guys are all on Twitter screaming for your lives, yelling. I mean, yeah, right. They are eating themselves alive right now. And where do I buy my comic? Where do I buy my comic books now? I still buy a bunch of, go support my local comic shops by buying back issues and old trades. But when it comes to most of my new books coming off of crowdfunding, they're coming from Indiegogo, man.
I don't blame you. Cyberfrog, go Cyberfrog, go. I've not got that yet, but I plan to get it one day. And
I've got first Cyberfrog and the deals with it. I've got was it the Redux of Black and White that Art T-Bear did. I've got nice. The Brett Weiser's doing Red Rooster.
Yeah, I got those, a lot of people. Allegiance books. Allegiance, yeah, I got those.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Mitch is not has taken some heat, and rightfully so, for putting the first part of Red Rooster into the stores before the backers got it.
Oh, really? Yikes! Did he do that?
Yeah,
oh, man.
Yeah, it's a 3-part story, and the first 22 pages, I think. I don't think he had an option. I think Walmart said no, it needs to be out by this date. And he was kind of stuck.
Wow, I did not know that. Oh my!
I don't think he had an option, and that's kind of. And I look at it like, if me waiting for a comic book means that the first part of the story goes in the stores, and maybe 10 5-year-olds pick it up and read a really cool superhero story, then it's worth it. I'll wait. I'm a grown man. I can deal with it.
But I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And I mean, there's a bunch more out there that are on there right now that I can't wait to come in. John Malin's Graveyard Shift, picking that up. I'll venture over to Kickstarter every now and then. And when some of the older guys put something out, because they don't play the game with all this stuff, they just they know Kickstarter, and that's what they do. So Tim Truman puts out a brand new volume of Scout onto Kickstarter, and it's like, well, it's Tim Truman's Scout. I have read Scout back in the 80s when it was coming from First Comics. I'm gonna pick that up. Steve Rude's like, hey, is on Facebook yesterday saying, hey, I've got a new sketchbook coming out on Kickstarter, pick it up. I'm like, all right, yeah, sure. But Florida Man by Mike Barron's over on Indiegogo, and I plan on picking that up. Love Mike Barron's great.
Yes, he is. I love Mike Barron. I used to love his Nexus and Badger, of course, which he still does sometimes. He's got a Nexus novel out right now.
Yeah, and he's mentioned that him and Rude will be getting back together to do some more Nexus in the near future.
Yeah, great. Steve Rude, man, he's the dude.
The dude. I was texting or putting in the chat on your other streams like, what dude are you talking about? There's only one dude. What are you talking about? It is only one dude. That is Steve.
I don't know if you were like General just hey dude, or was it Steve the Dude Rude? Yeah, he was yeah, there's a documentary or something on him or whatever, I think, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It goes into a lot of the reasons why we probably haven't seen more prolific work from the man than we have, in sort of the mental struggles that he has to kind of maneuver around to be able to work. I think he's bipolar or manic depressive. And and it's funny because I've met him back in the late 90s and had nothing but good things to say about him. He looked at a young 20-something-year-old's portfolio who didn't know anything at the time about storytelling, just happened to be a somewhat decent artist, and took the time to really look at it and tell me what was right, tell me what was wrong, and actually gave me some praise, but at the same time was critical where I had problems. I've had a bunch of people like that. If you don't have the strong constitution, I would not recommend going to Neil Adams and asking for a portfolio review.
Yeah, so I've heard. Yeah, he's going to tell you about it. So yeah,
you walk out of that one with cuts and bruises. I promise you that.
Yep.
But I tell you, what he does is he will blast your art. But with me, he sat me down and he said, you need to think, and this is for any artist that's out there listening, you need to think about the world in a completely different way. And it was like, a good artist not only understands what he's drawing, but he understands how what he's drawing is built. Like what height they put a light switch, and the fact that it's only going to be this far off the wall because the light switch next to a door is the box is mounted to the door frame, outside door frame of on the joist as of the door frame behind the wall. So that's where the light switch is mounted. So if you're a foot off of the door frame, then that's not where the light switch goes. You're breaking a sense of realism, and you don't even realize it by not understanding how everything is built. You know, your AC outlets are generally only about a foot off the ground. They need to be a foot off the ground. The doorknob generally sits at about 2.5 to 3 feet off the ground. You know, you need to know how everything, become as much of an engineer as you are an artist, and discover how the world is built. Know how the sausage is made, because it informs how your art is. And then he says, in all honesty, there is not enough information in your head. You couldn't put enough information in your head to learn how to draw everything that's out there. And he says, and he even told me, he goes, outside of the characters and the ability to tell a story, if it comes to the backgrounds or drawing vehicles or machinery, what have you, trace. So there's no harm in it. As much as everyone I know takes heat for it, trace. And says that the trick is to, when you do it, don't make it look traced. Make it look like you drew it, but trace it, because you can't, where's the knowledge? Is the knowledge in your head, or is it out in the world? And can you put the entire world's worth of knowledge in your head? No. Don't feel bad about tracing. And it's like, do what you got to do to tell the story. That's the important part, is you're there. You're not there to be an illustrator. You're there to be a storyteller. So do what you got to do to tell your story. That's one of the things when I hear people bitch about John Romita Jr. all the time, in that, I can't stand his style and what have you. And it's like, well, you may not be a fan of John Romita Jr.'s rendering style. That's understandable. But if you want to take the time and cut out the reading the comic book and actually look at the sequential art, panel to panel storytelling that he is doing within the book, outside of Will Eisner, I don't think there's a better panel to panel storyteller in the business. John Jr. is the best. And it's amazing what he can do with the panels to tell a story, so that you don't even have to read it. You can just look at it and know what's going on. It was back in 2002 when Marvel did the Nuff Said month, where that's what they did, was they tried to mimic that one issue of G.I. Joe that Larry Hama did, where it was completely silent, no dialogue, no captions, no nothing. The pictures told the story, and that's what they were attempting. And for the most part, everybody failed. The one person that didn't was the guy who was drawing Amazing Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. That man was John Romita Jr. And those two books were incredible.
Yep. Well, I'm not one of those who doesn't like JR, but a lot of people do. And you hear, I don't know, he really takes a lot of heat from a lot of people. I think we just
the nicest guy in comics. You will never meet a nicer guy in comics. I don't care. Maybe Walt Simonson, but outside of that, just smile on his face. Always happy to see a fan. Always happy to see a fan. Great guy.
Well, that's what I've heard. Guy. I've heard that. Yeah, absolutely. I think she already left, but just in case, good night, Iris. She said she was had to run off. Thank you, though. Job, are you still there? And are you still there? I think we lost a few people.
Well, I'm about to have to go anyway. I'm about to have to go anyway. I have a son out there who's. I got to make sure he's not watching something he's not supposed to be, and make sure he's 11.
Oh man, let him live a little. No, I'm just kidding. You got to watch it. I remember when my son is 31 now, dude. So, I remember that though.
Well, I remember. I guess he was about. I've been a little more liberal about what I allow him to watch than my parents were with me, because my parents were nope, can't watch PG-13 until you're 13. Can't watch rated R until you're 17.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, ugh. And I've let him watch a few movies that I know if his mother knew probably wouldn't be happy, but I'm still very particular about what he sees. And I let him watch. I guess he was about 8, maybe 9, and it was the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. It was just something we wanted. We were just like, whatever. Something to kill time for 2 hours. It's a terrible movie, but
was he being punished or something? I mean.
No. Neither one of us had seen it. We're just like, yeah, you want to watch it? Yeah, sure, whatever. All right. So anyway, we put it on, and even whether you like the movie or not, it's a pretty dark movie. It's got some pretty dark stuff in it, and I kind of looked at him, and it's like, am I feeding you stuff, putting stuff in your brain that maybe stuff give you nightmares? I mean, I don't want to be a bad dad here and put stuff in front of you you're not ready for. And he looks at me and goes, Dad, you want to know what scares me about this movie? Just how terrible the special effects in here are. The CGI is just god awful. And I'm like, all right, you're right. I ain't got to worry about you.
He's fine. Yeah, well, sounds like he's got a good head on his shoulders and he knows what he's doing. So that's the good thing. Oh man, well that's great, dude. Of course, and you have raised him to where he likes he does like comics so far, right? I mean,
he likes superheroes. He is but he has found his own way into genre completely outside of me. And I don't know what to say about it, but he's his own kid. I'm Star Wars, Star Trek, and superheroes. He is all about Doctor Who.
Nice.
I've gotten him into watching some Tom Baker and Peter Davidson, but he's got all the Christopher Eccleston, he's got all of David Tennant, he's got all of Matt Smith, and he says, I'll stop right there. I don't have to go any further.
Good man.
And I was like, I think it's for the best, son. I think it's for the best. I know Peter Capaldi had some decent episodes, but I think it's best to stop where you did. And then he is probably the way Star Wars changed how I perceived genre when I was 4. He was 4 when I took him, because I asked around and was like, he's 4 years old, but he's pretty sharp 4-year-old. Can I take him to see Pacific Rim? Do you think he'd be okay? And everyone's like, yeah, most of the violence is robot on monster stuff. So, and I'm like, well, I was 4 when I saw Star Wars. We'll give it a shot. Let's see what happens. So that's what we did. Well, and cool. He walked out of there, and he has been a lifelong Kaiju fan ever since. He has he's like, Dad, I don't have this one. And I was like, okay. So at this point, I think he has every single Godzilla movie made.
Dude, that's a crazy coincidence. My son at that age, and he still loves it. He's a Godzilla freak, and I remember I scoured eBay, finding every single Godzilla figure you could get for him. He still has all those. Man, it took me forever to get Biollante. He was so excited. I got Biollante for his birthday way back when. He's the same same thing.
We sailed the high seas to find Biollante. It was the only way we could.
Oh wow, he was tough
and
to find even back then.
Yeah, well, no, we just, yeah, I was gonna say, but we just did. In fact, he got it in January,
Really? Wow.
at a convention. Yeah, we've been looking for years for it, and finally we found a guy who happened to have some DVDs that maybe weren't quite production, and but
I'm
were
talking about the
it's
figure. Yeah, but I hear you.
oh no, that's easy to hunt down. There's a guy out in Texas that can get me whatever I want. The NECA stuff has been great. You can get a Biollante, but it doesn't do a whole lot of movement. And with the legendary Godzilla movies coming out, a lot of the Godzilla merchandise has been a little bit easier to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hell, you can go find it in Walmart right now if you want. So.
Well, you're on the right track. Both of my kids caught the geek gene. I'm the first one in my whole family with the geek gene, and I had one nephew that I turned into a geek before my kids were born. Another one that we geeked out together over football, but still, at least he loves that. So NFL, but so we had that. I had two nephews that I was the when you get to be the cool uncle. But when I had my own kids, they both have the geek gene. Now I was able to instill the proper respect for superheroes, Star Trek, Star Wars. But they still went their own way. They both love anime. My son loves video games. My daughter is a big-time cosplayer, very good at making all that kind of stuff. But her favorite thing is anime and cosplay. He is his anime video, and he's a big video gamer. But he does love Trek and classic Doctor Who and comics and stuff like that. I made him. When he was old enough, I let him read Watchmen, and I waited till he was about 15 or 16. And so, and he grew up on Godzilla. He's a big time Star Wars and Star Wars EU fan. Now he loves Warhammer, and One Piece is his favorite thing in the world, and he loves video games. But he still has the proper respect for all the right stuff. But none of them, just like you just talked about. With me, it's comics, Star Trek, of course, it's Doctor Who, Star Wars, those things. A lot of conventional geek shit, I guess. But with him, it's. But at least he gets it. They get it because they're geeks. So they understand. And that's
right.
That's the thing.
When my copy of Cyberfrog came in, he pulled it out and he read it. And I didn't even ask him or suggest it to him. He's like, "That was pretty good. I think you're gonna like it." I'm like, "You read this?" He's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And it's like, because he doesn't generally read a whole lot of comics. He's big into dinosaurs, so we scoured and found Stephen Bissett's Tyrant 4-issue miniseries.
Oh, cool.
And we weren't even paying attention when we found him up in Pittsburgh when he came to visit me while I was working, and we took him home, and he's looking at him. He goes, "Dad, what's this?" And I was like, "Oh, son, you got a bonus on these two. On the first two issues are autographed by Stephen Bissett."
Oh, nice. So, yeah, my son, he read a lot of comics, but now he's a smart ass. When they get older, they get smart asses. Just love him right now when you got him, because he knows how much I bitch him on how much I hate new comics, and he likes to mess with me. Go, well, if you read manga, you wouldn't have that friggin' problem, because those guys still the same creator does the same book for 20 years, so you don't have them ruining shit that you love. He likes to mess with me about it. Once we get into manga.
I tell you what, I can't read manga. It's just not my thing.
Me either.
It just isn't. But what I was able to do was start looking over to Europe, and so Valerian, the City of Thousand Planets came out, and they re-released all of the Valerian and Lorraine books on 7 hardbacks. And I was like, you know what? The art in here is really pretty amazing. I'm going to pick these up. And I had heard about Andrea Jodorowsky and Mobius's The Inkle, and so I picked that up, and I was hooked. Of course, I'm reading the best of the best, but so Jodorowsky's got within that same world, he's got Techno Priest, Megalex, the Metabarons, the Metabarin, all the and then there's Before the Inkle, and then the Final Inkle, and it's a really interesting reading. I'm finding stuff from Europe that I like. I'm about to get into Asterix and Obelix, because a comic is a comic, and I don't really care if you have a cartoon style or a very illustrative style, tell me a good story. And everyone's like, dude, if you haven't read Asterix and Obelix, you really ought to give it a shot. I think you'd enjoy it.
I have read some of those, and one thing I'd like to do here, I would like to start doing something on Saturday nights, do like comic Convo, just talk comics and stuff, but I'm gonna do a Star Trek talk, different things like that. So I hope, man, you will come back and talk comics whenever you can, because I love talking comics with you, man. It's something I can do. Well, I think you've guessed that we can both do that a whole lot.
Yeah, so we've been on here for almost 2 hours now.
Good Lord, have we?
Yeah, for an hour and 54 minutes.
Wow, shit, man! I appreciate you being here, man. Like I said, I'm gonna dedicate time to comics a lot, but I'm gonna do other things, Star Trek and many other things. I've been rereading a bunch of stuff on the DC app because I like swinging it to the TV. My eyes get burned up when I try to read a comic. Just sit there sometimes, but the comic art looks beautiful blown up on that screen like that, and I've been really enjoying it. So, great stuff.
DC has been putting out trades. I didn't. The Perez Wolfman Teen Titans started before I got to DC in '86. So they just put out volume 11 of that run in trade, and so I've been reading those. And then was it right after Jason Todd became Robin? They've been putting out 2 different Batman trade series. One's called the Dark Knight or the Dark Detective. That's the Detective Comics trades. And then the other one's the Cape Crusader, which is the Batman trades. And so it looks like they're chronicling everything from about Death of the Family. No, actually, they go a little bit before Death of the Family. And then they skip that. And then they go further on past that. Now, I'm assuming they're going to go all the way up until you get to Nightfall. I'm hoping because and these are the books, from the late 80s, early 90s when Batman, you had Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogle on Detective. Jim Aparo was still on Batman. Yep. And doing some amazing work, but he would swap out, and then you would get somebody like, Tim Truman coming for a couple of issues, or Dick Giordano, or you name it. Every artist, Dennis Cowan would come in for a little bit, and it's really kind of fun to see so many different artists come in and writers come in that period to tell 2 or 3 Batman stories, bug out, and somebody else come in to tell some really cool Batman stories. The Jim Aparo, Jim Starlin story, which 4 issues called 10 Nights of the Beast. Yeah. That tells the story of the KG Beast. Yeah. That's probably my favorite in continuity Batman story of all time. I love that story.
Wow. Well, I hadn't read that in a long, long, long time. I remember when it came out, though. That may have been when I had my shop, if I'm remembering right, but I'm not sure.
I've been about that time. It just came out in trade maybe about 3 or 4 months ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I've been into lately is reading those, and with the Superman stuff that somebody suggested, you really ought to give the Bendis stuff a chance. It's actually writing some good stuff, and I'm like, no, he's not. The only I will say this. They're pretty because Ivan Race knows how to draw really well.
Yeah, he's all right. Yeah, but Bendis, I don't want to get into Bendis. It just drives me nuts. But at least I have Claude reading that shit and telling me how bad it is. He tells me what to do, and it's terrible.
The good news is I hear he's leaving Superman. I don't know when, but it is going to happen.
Yeah, maybe they'll get a writer who will just ignore all of his crap. So.
Yeah, well, my fear is they're going to give him Batman, and he's going to screw that up.
Oh, he's terrible. God. Well, what are you going to do? That's the way comics are now, brother. Sucks. Oh, my goodness. Man, I tell you what, I cannot believe it's been 2 hours. Jesus, dude. I mean, I hope I didn't keep you from anything, but I sure had a good time. This is what I love doing, man. That's why I came back to doing it.
No, in fact, I've been looking forward to doing this for a long time. You and me chatting both Byrne and then getting on to
anything,
comics. I mean, I mean, I can. The sad part is we could make this an 8-hour podcast, like a Doomcock,
Doomcock or Gary,
live stream, and I would be fine. But at some point, I think my child would probably come in and say, "Dude, come on."
No, I hear you there, brother. Dude, but anytime when I'm gonna bug you all the time. Saying, "Hey, man, you want to do a show? I'm gonna bug you," and whenever you're able, Saturday nights or whatever nights, or even sometimes, you probably work a lot in the daytimes, but
actually, the problem is that most of the work that I do, I'm on the road quite a bit, and when I do work, it's usually at night, so I don't get a whole lot of time to do these. So the reason why I picked Saturday is if we were going to do this, Saturday would probably be the best time to do it because it's the one day of the week no one's going to bug me.
Well, Saturday night's perfect because Friday nights, we both like to, listen to Gary and Doomcock, things like that, and I wouldn't. I mean, not that I got no, I just but there are a lot of nights none of those guys are on. So, and tonight, like I said, I don't know if any of them are on. None of them are on. So, love those guys. They're fantastic. And anytime you were able to, I'm gonna make it a regular thing on Saturday night. Now I'm gonna be here on Saturday nights and see what happens, brother.
All right, I'd be happy to join you.
Thank you, man. I do appreciate it, everyone. That's the great Mark C. And anytime, buddy, come back soon. He has had to run, of course. I can't believe it. That was that was 2 hours. Yeah. RR and Davis Q. Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I got Just Joe, the legendary jobber, is here. I don't know who else is here because you can't really, as far as I know, you can't really tell by these things. But it's cool. I don't know if that's interesting to you guys or not, but I do love talking comics. I'm also going to start doing something where, like my friend Flash will come over from BTR. We'll be doing some open geek talk stuff a lot. But on Saturday nights, I want to have a topic. I might make it just comics on Saturday nights, and for 3 nights, 3 of the nights of the month, and then 1 month do Trek talk. I'm a big Star Trek fan. Don't know if any of you guys are, but I love Star Trek. And on my old show for years ago, I used to do Trek talk, and I love to talk Star Trek. I'm very excited. Today I got, it says 3. We're just starting out, Job. It's not like, it's kind of back to the drawing board till I get some of my old viewers from BTR. Hopefully they'll pick up some views later. I'm going to have Doomcock on eventually. He said he will come on when he can. And of course, it'd be great to have him back on. He was on my old show once before, and he's been nice enough to have me on his show a couple of times. He is fantastic, the great Lord Doomcock, and he's going to help me, get some more people some attention. He said, and I do appreciate him. And not that he didn't have to; he's just a cool dude, and he's nice enough to do it. So you can never tell who's on there, but like I say, you can see that there's some. It says 3. We knew it wasn't really going to be any that many viewers on a Saturday night or anything like that, but it's still a night where I just figured I would use it because there's so many other nights that are taken by so many other, guys out there in that wonderful fandom menace, which I love and identify with. And I'm not in their league, never was. Been doing this 11 years, and I'll never be in the league of a guy like Doomcock or Gary or Critical Drinker or, any of those guys. But I do love them, though. They're great. But I love real Star Trek, no bad reboot filth. I just got today, I ordered it about 3-4 weeks ago, but it was on back order. The 50th anniversary box set of Star Trek, the original series, which came out in 2016, but I just couldn't afford it. It was just really expensive for me anyway. And it finally went down to a really nice price. So I snagged it a few weeks ago. Then it took almost like more than a month because, well, it was, it was on back order. I thought I wasn't going to get it. It finally came in today, and it's beautiful. It is a thing. It is fantastic. I'm all about like my good buddy from Retro Blasting, Michael French, says, I'm all about buy the physical copies. Buy the physical, buy the physical, buy the physical. If something you really love, there are too many things coming out right now that we're being hearing about in the news and stuff about censoring in this idiotic, censorious, sick society we're in right now. All these people canceling every goddamn thing. Okay, well, I didn't know. Yeah, there you go. Well, those guys are the big leaguers. Yeah, I'm I'm an old Blog Talk Radio dinosaur, RR. I like listening to those guys too. I love Cecil and EVS and was it Malin and Anna? I love Anna and all of them. So big chunk of comic book fans there. I understand that for sure. But I appreciate that, R. Man, that's dude. I mean, we both love comics. I don't know if we're as. How can you be more entertaining than Cecil, though? I mean, that dude is hilarious. He doesn't know me, but I love him. He's fantastic. I watch Cecil anytime I get a chance to watch it, even their Crazy Jack show. I also like they're watching Star Trek original season episodes now over on I think it's Anna's channel or it's Drunk 3PO or whatever, and that's kind of fun. But I love talking comics. Mark loves talking comics. I see that you are someone who knows comics very well, which is cool. And I also love talking Trek, like I say, and we're going to do that as well. That box set, though, is fantastic. One thing I hate that I thought was not the case, and I just found it looks to me like the GORAM episodes are in air date order, not production order, which pisses me off. But I can watch them in production order. It's not that big of a deal. But I'm the kind who watches Trek episodes so much, you know, and even though I've had them on DVD forever until I got these Blu-rays just now, I get lazy. I'm here, you there. I love to just talk comics, yeah. But I am going a little Trek right now. But I get a little lazy and just watch them on Netflix at random and stuff. But now I'm gonna binge them all now. Jobber says there's already a backlash against cancel culture. I forgot which celebrity said they don't want to cancel anybody. Few celebrities are. Look, the celebrities, some of them are going to start to realize even that they don't want to freaking be canceled either. Or was it stupid ass HBO Max? Was it HBO Max that took 5 episodes of South Park off? Screw them. I mean, what a bunch of jagoffs, man. Seriously. Fuck them. So if it's something you love, film, TV show, what have you, own the physicals. I mean, and get them, you know, that they before, and like if they put out a newer of it, like with Doctor Who, I'm worried shitless at that new Doctor Who 14th season that has the Talons of Wen Chiang, the Tom Baker season. The BBC version's coming out soon, and then about a month or two later, the American Blu-ray. I hope it hasn't been fiddled with. I don't think it has, and I hope they don't take them off the market. Absolutely. I love anything that's not Kurtzman filth or a bad reboot filth. I'll talk Trek all day long. The original series, but also look, Next Gen and Deep Space Nine, even Voyager, and I'm one of those few that likes Enterprise, and a lot of people don't. Only real deal Trek, not AirSats, Jar Jar Abrams filth. And when you say Kurtzman, to me, that's the same as saying Jar Jar Abrams. It's the same. It's all the same. You know, Kurtzman he's a Jar Jar Abrams disciple acolyte. So screw his face until it falls off. Screw him in the mouth. But that set though, it's beautiful, man. It's got obviously the original series. It has the Blu-rays have the option to watch it the old way without the new effects, or the old new way with the effects. I have no problem with the remastered. They're fun to watch, but you can watch it either way now. They're beautiful copies, what I've seen so far. The animated series for the first time on Blu-ray. Glad I'm not the only one, RR. And of course the films and some other nice stuff. The thing about the only thing it's missing, the only one thing in it is missing is Star Trek the Motion Picture, the director's cut, because that was never released on Blu-ray. But I have that on DVD. I still have all my old DVDs of the seasons. And man, I may even still have my old VHSs somewhere. Bought them all, Trek is Trek. And yet, for the longest time, I had not had Trek on Blu-ray till today. I have Enterprise on DVD, of course. And one day I'm gonna try, and if they go cheap enough, I'll get Next Gen on Blu-ray, which they've remastered, and I'll get DS9 on Blu-ray, and even Enterprise on Blu-ray. I'm not the biggest Voyager guy, but I don't hate it. I respect a lot of people love it, and that's cool. It's fine. Not the biggest Voyager fella, but I did finally watch them all a couple years back. And they're okay. But I love the Blu-ray setup. I'm tickled pink about that. Now I'm going to go ahead and binge them in order, and then binge after I binge the episodes, binge the animated series, and binge the movies. Why not? They didn't include Generations, which I'm strangely okay with, because even though Kirk is in it, he dies. So screw that crap. To me, the Shatner books, the Shatner Kirk books are canon, and I stand by them. Damn it, he didn't die. Dukak's worse than I am. He hates Generations to the point he never watched it, and he hates First Contact. Oh man, he's the greatest. He's really cool. It was very nice of him to give me a plug last night. Yeah, but anyway, what can you do? Yeah, a few of us. I mean, a few of us do love Enterprise, buddy. There's the thing. So I hope this, like I said, once we get this thing going, I think that'll be Saturday night comic book convo. We'll talk comics. If Mark can't make it, whenever he can make it, he's always welcome to come in and talk comics. If not, one of the things I didn't get a chance to tell him that I want to do. See, I'm kind of back when I used to do the old show Jobber, as you know, and I don't know what you thought about it, but Flash and I, and in the old days when Matt was here, we used to have a really good time doing our top 25 lists. It was a fun thing to do. I kind of like to redo some of those on here, but also I would like to do some things where we either we'll watch a Trek episode, then come talk on it on here, or when it comes to comics, we'll read some big comic book, classic comic saga or what have you, and then do a show talking just about that. I don't know if that's something anyone would want to listen to. I don't know. Probably not. But hey, I would like to do that. And I'm thinking about doing that. So, but, who knows? We'll see. My friend Jobber never got into Enterprise. Well, you're not alone. A lot of people didn't. I loved it. I'm one of those weirdos who actually liked the first 2 seasons of Enterprise as well as some of the third, but I had some problems with it. I liked the fourth, but I was talking earlier about how I like shorter stories. Sometimes long story arcs kind of bog down and kind of lose me sometimes. Is it because I have a crappy attention span? I don't know. So if you think that's pretty cool, RR, I kind of like that idea. Just for an example, I just reread, as I've talked about before, I use a Sling. I get the DC app, DC Universe app, and they have a lot of comics on there. A lot of old comics too. $8 a month. They have a lot of old TV shows, different things like that. And I like to use it. You have to use a different app for the comics. They have a Sling. They have a Sling to the TV thing for the movies and the TV on there, but you can't do it with the comics. But if you use a different app, I could sling that to my TV and I could read these DC comics on my big TV. I know digital comics are a heresy, but I'm an old man with crappy eyesight. If I sit there and hold a comic for long, my eyes start to burn. But this way, blowing them up on that big screen, not only is it fun, comic book art looks beautiful on your big TV screen. And I love blowing up those panels. And so I've been reading a bunch of comics on there. I reread the Great Darkness Saga. Oh, there's Mark. Mark, see, brother? Dude, yes, that's an idea I've had for a while. I would love to do that. Yep. And I loved, I've read some of these before. I love the Great Darkness Saga, but it's been 20-something or more years since I'd read it. And I remember I pulled out my hardcover of it. And then I went to the DC app and said, man, it's just easier to read it this way. The comic art looks beautiful on that screen, like I was saying earlier. And then I read a bunch of other comics here and there. I was reading the Lin Wing, Dave Gibbons run on Green Lantern of the early 80s. That was a lot better. Some of these are a lot better than I remembered them. It's been so long. And they have if you can do like a filter search, and they've got comics by era, Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, and I'm a Bronze Age baby, so I stop at the Bronze Age. But I reread All-Star Superman, which I loved. I loved it even better this time. Again, it was a lot of fun. And I just reread Justice by Jim Kruger, Alex Ross, and Doug Braithwaite. It's something that art is ubiquitous because it's been around forever. And people tend to think of that series just for the Alex Ross art. But rereading that again, and I read it back when it came out. It lasted from 2005 to 2007. It was bi-monthly in multiple issues. But rereading that again, I just adored it. I thought the story was brilliant. I thought it was when I say Alan Moore, that's a compliment for me because I love a lot of his old superhero work. Jim Krueger was very Alan Moore-esque. I know he also wrote Earth X with Ross. And I know Ross maybe plotted it with him, but this is really great. It's like reading a movie, and it looks fantastic on the big screen. If I got a genie and got my 3 wishes, one of them's going to be a movie that looks just like Justice, exactly like it, and it's like reading a movie. It was fantastic. It's a great story. The characterization is really brilliant. It's got its super darkness to it, but they all look like they're right out of the Bronze Age. They even call them the Justice League of America, which I love. True story. I made sure my son's initials were JLA because I'm not much of a geek. My son's initials, yes, are JLA. But Eastland and Burkholder, welcome. It's great to see you there. So, Justice, if you get a chance to reread that, nothing wrong with blowing up on the big screen. I have digital copies of my favorite issues that I own because it's easier to read them. Don't have to dig through 50 long boxes to find them. That's very true, RR. But I still want, by the way, I still always try to I always have the physicals, but digital can be fun and can be useful. But that's a very good point, RR. Absolutely. You don't have to go digging through them because there's some stuff would take me forever to find it with all my comics. But yeah, all the characters are in their perfect costumes. Mark mentioned earlier Garcia Lopez, who did the style guide for DC Comics, and he's so right. That Garcia art with those designs are perfect. Well, even though this isn't by Garcia, Justice, they're all in those perfect costumes, those perfect Bronze Age costumes, all of them. And the characterization is brilliant. Batman is great in it. Superman is great in it. Green Lantern is great in it. And the best thing for me, Captain America, listen to me. I'm an idiot. Captain Marvel, I repeat, Captain Marvel, she's not called Shazam. He's so well characterized in this story. He kind of shines in it because he's not friggin' something they did to Captain America. I mean, why are you saying Captain America? Because I'm a moron. That's why. Sorry. Captain Marvel, not Shazam. He's Captain Marvel. At some point in the 80s, and I think it was Roy Thomas. I hope it wasn't him. I think it was him and Ordway. They put Billy Batson's mind, when he says Shazam in terms of the Captain Marvel, he was just a kid inside. He was Billy Batson. He wasn't like that before. He was all before that. He had, the wisdom of Solomon. He was still an adult. There was a little Billy in there, but he was an adult as well. He's so well handled in Justice by Jim Krueger and Alex Ross. Like you said, the real Captain Marvel shows, I am. And he's so great in Justice. That's one of the highlights of this book, that he truly acts like Captain Marvel. He gets a lot to do, but they do a pretty good job of letting everyone do very well. And that's one book, for example, that I would want to sit and talk. Like a couple of weeks ago, one of my favorite YouTubers, The Critical Drinker, and one of my other favorite YouTubers, the great Gary from Nerdrotic, spent 4 hours talking about one film, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the masterpiece, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And that was great. And I would like to do that about some films, some episodes of Trek, and some comics. Hell, even Doctor Who episodes. Exactly. Captain America, Marvel. I love Captain America, but I'm obsessed with him. Captain Marvel is not big. Just not. Exactly. Very good point, Mark. He's an adult when he becomes Captain Marvel. That's the damn point. I can't stand. I love the Justice League cartoon. And I hate how it was still a good episode when he fought Superman, but I hate how they characterized him. Him having the kid inside of him is just asinine. And I want to say it was done by, I don't know if it was Thomas. It was Jerry Ordway, maybe. I forget who it was, but it couldn't have been. I don't think Thomas would do something like that, but I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, but I hate that crap. It's like the movie. The Shazam movie is so likable, but there's just so much to hate about it too. I really wanted to like it way more than I did. I like the casting of Zachary Levi, and it's fun if you don't think about Captain Marvel, but that's tough for me. I've loved Captain Marvel. Richard Sullivan, great to see you there, my good friend. I've loved Captain Marvel since I was a kid in the early 70s and bought the book Captain Marvel from the 40s to the 70s, which I still have. Excuse me, it's Shazam from the Marvel to the 70s, what it's called. But so I've loved that character since then. And of course, not too far after that, the Filmation live action Shazam TV series. Shazam. Exactly. Richard Sullivan, my friend. It's good to see you there, buddy. But that's just me geeking out on it. What can I tell you? Yeah, I'm not sure who I have to blame for that, but it's annoying, you know. What you gonna do? Yeah. So anyway, if you have not read Justice, and I had not for 12 years or whatever, and I remember, yeah, I liked it fair enough. But when you're reading a month to month and you're liking it, sometimes, and you get older, things change. You change. We all change. And there have been many times I found in my life, maybe this is just me, maybe because I'm wishy-washy, I don't know. There have been many times in my life when I've seen something. Now, sometimes it happens the other way around. You liked it a lot before, you see it later, you don't like it as much. But for me, I've been lucky. A lot of times when I've not really liked something all that much before and watch it many, many, many years later, because I have many, many years, because I'm old, I'll get a new perspective on it, a fresher perspective, and go, wow, I either didn't catch that before. I like that more now for some reason. Maybe life experience has made things different. Maybe comics are just so bankrupt and so bad. Maybe I'm easier to please now. Maybe because movies or comics. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It could be anything, but all I know is there have been some things. I mean, I really, really, really liked All-Star Superman back when I first read it, and I read it this time and got even more out of it. Now, the animated film of All-Star Superman is also pretty entertaining, but they left out some of my favorite bits. You know, and so there's some stuff that I might have really disliked a long time ago that if I read them now, I might like them better. I don't know. You kind of, you know, you start seeing what you've been missing sometimes, or sometimes you realize things are, you know, things were so much better at that point, quality-wise, that now beggars can't be choosers. There could be an element to that in it. I don't know. But also, it's just when you read something when you were very young, or watch something when you were very young, you see it when you're older through older eyes. That happens as well. I found that to be the case, you know, for me on a number of occasions. And you know, I guess I shouldn't be surprised to admit it, or I shouldn't be embarrassed to admit it. I don't know. I don't know. So, yeah. Well, I like what Mark said earlier that I forgot to address there. Yeah. Justice is like reading Badass Super Friends. Yeah, but it's way, way darker than that, buddy. And unfortunately, there's no Wendy and Marvin or Wonder Twins. But there are the Metal Men. And again, everybody gets something cool to do. There's some really cool stuff in it. Well, I'll wait for, if I ever get a chance to have someone to like bounce off and review it with, I'll wait to talk about it in depth. But I really, really, really loved it. Rereading it again and stuff. And I'm going, man, that's a movie. And look, we'll never get it ever on as live action. But could we at least, and we're not going to get this either, but how cool would it be to get that as a DC animated film? Because I hate the DC animated films the way they are now. To me, they used to be so good. To me, they're really horrible lately. That's just me, because they're all Screw 52-ish. But I'd love to, they should adapt that one, you know. Yeah, they should. And again, it's people like to bitch and moan about comics. You know, they like the darker stuff. Justice is dark, dude. It just walks that tightrope though, where it's not dark to where it's distasteful, but it has some brutal stuff in it. One of the fun, and the Joker's hilarious in it. I love that fact that the villains, you know, left the Joker out of their big plan because he's too much trouble. So it was pretty cool. Great stuff. Great stuff. Oh my goodness. Well, what can you do? I will probably run off now, man, because well, I've been on for, and this is usually the old show. I used to go. Well, we went 3 hours sometimes, Flash and I. And I'm hopefully going to be having Flash on again next week. But we're going to try to do 2 shows next week. I'm thinking maybe, if not Wednesday night, probably Thursday in the daytime or Thursday night, I will do another show. It'll probably open Geek Talk where Flash will join me, my old partner. I agree with that. DC animation. I hope they make some more good ones. I mean, I saw the preview for that Superman, that new Superman one, whatever it's called, Man of Tomorrow. The costume isn't too bad. The animation, but I'll watch it. Claude said that Red Sun was horrible. I didn't get to see that, but I heard that Red Sun was really bad. And Jobber, we will. My good buddy Michael from Retro Blasting is going to be coming on with me pretty soon. Eastland Burkholder, thank you for being here. But yes, Jobber, Michael from Retro Blasting, I've already talked to him about it. My dear friend, he will be coming on pretty soon. We just got to set it up, but he's always willing to come on. He is a great, great friend, and I hope to have him on soon. I'm kind of embarrassed, I have like no subscribers yet, and he has, zillions, of course. He always thinks he wants more, and he does, and he needs to get me. I hope he gets more, of course, but compared to me, and it'll be almost embarrassing. But he wouldn't care. He's a buddy. He will come on, and he's always been nice enough. Michael's been doing my show since we met in 2011 at Dragon Con, and he's been doing my show ever since. And he's been fantastic, even for a while there, for a few years in the early days of the show. Michael and Melinda came on once a month. They had a retro blasting special every month for a while there. I don't know what it was, 2012, 13, whatever, somewhere up in there for a good while. And it was fun. It's just that, they got kind of busy with stuff, but yes, Joe. Yeah. We'll have Michael on soon. I was just talking to him today, and they, of course, Retro Blasting had a live stream talking about the A-Team today, which is cool. And I'm hoping they're going to be doing Star Trek pretty soon, I think. Maybe they said. I don't know when they're doing that, but that'll be fun. I love their Saturday live streams. And again, R said the Red Sun animated film was ideological propaganda piece, ruined a great story. It pissed me off. I can't blame it. That was a pretty good comic. For them to make it, it's not surprising that they made it identity propaganda or ideological propaganda, but that figures, sadly. And I don't blame it. It should piss you off. It's crap. I wonder if Millar signed off on that. Probably, but that's a damn shame. That's a damn shame, RR. Now, anyway, I'm going to start saying my goodbyes here, and I want to thank the great Mark C for being here. I don't know if you're still listening, buddy, but I appreciate it, and I hope we will do it again soon. RR, my new friend RR, it is always a pleasure. I love seeing you here and seeing you around the live stream universe when we bump into each other. And I hope, sorry. Eastland Burkholder, of course, popped in. Great to see you there. The fantastic Just Joe 47, my old buddy Jobber. Joe, thank you for being here, my brother. And, of course, my good buddy Richard Sullivan popped in. Thanks, sir. Anyone else that I'm missing that I did not see their name or whatever, thank you for being here. And if you're listening to this on a replay, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation about comics, because I certainly enjoyed having it. Mark is great to talk to about comics, knows his stuff. And we'll be doing a lot of that. We'll be doing some more Trek talk, comic talk, open stuff. I'm going to have Flash on. We all have a good time. So have a great night there, everyone. Good to see you, my friends. Take care. And I am going to head out of here. Good buddies. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.